Oh, I'm on right now. All right. Hey, it is Wednesday afternoon in East Lansing, Michigan. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Come on in, gather around. Let's talk some Michigan State sports, Michigan State football, Michigan State basketball, a little bit of coach search or a lot of coach search. We have questions from the Underground Bunker message board. We will address those questions in mailbag form, and a lot of those do pertain to the coach search and so forth. Let me know. It looks like the audio is working, so we're going to go ahead and get started. We've got Paul Konerdijk with us. Paul Konerdijk's going to talk some Michigan State basketball and football. Paul Konerdijk, the longtime associate editor of SpartanMag.com and also Spartan Magazine going back a number of years. Really lucky to have had him work with us for so long. He's built up great credibility and great following among Michigan State fans, and he's been a great sidekick and a good friend, very good friend, a great friend also. So we appreciate Paul coming on the air. Paul, how you doing today? You doing okay?
I'm doing good, man. I survived trick-or-treating last night and ran into some subscribers while I was out there. It's all a good time. Survived trick-or-treating last night and ran into some subscribers while I was out there. It's all a good time.
Was anybody dressed up as a subscriber? Probably not, right?
No, but you can tell that they're subscribers because they look at you all weird. I was dressed as Captain Hook last night. My daughter was Peter Pan, and I still had some subscribers recognize me. So shout out to any of those who might be listening to Smart Mag Live right now.
Awesome. And I do know that look you're talking about. It is good. You know, those of you that are subscribers, if you see us out wandering about, hey, come up and say hi. But the first initial seconds, you're not sure if it's me that's
bill
next
collector?
If it's me next to your tailgate, I get that at tailgating. And they're like, dude, that looks like that Comparoni idiot. Is that Comparoni idiot? Oh, God, let's go ask him how stupid he is. I get that, but I know the look you're talking about when you're in Michigan State circles. It's fun. And, I don't know if anything can equal your Bob Ross costume. Was that last year or the year before for Halloween?
Yeah, Bob Ross, that was really good. But I felt like this year was solid. Captain Hook, Sophie was Peter Pan, so it was a good look. I wanted to go as a scaredy lion from Wizard of Oz, but she didn't want to be Dorothy, so I had to roll with it.
I got to stop you there. The scary lion from Wizard of Oz? Don't you mean the cowardly lion?
Scaredy.
The
scaredy lion.
I got you. Yep. Yeah, I had a teacher in 8th grade who looked exactly like the Cowardly Lion. It was upsetting a little bit. Decent person. Anyway, let's get into basketball here because we don't have you for very long. You were at Breslin Center for Michigan State's exhibition game against Tennessee, and everybody, we will get into football shortly, but Paul and I was not there for the Tennessee game. I was still in Minneapolis, was visiting with a friend of mine who's had some major surgery, had a great time with him, old Michigan State friend of mine. I know him going back to 6 East Holden Hall back in the late 80s, so it was good to spend some extra time with him. And so I did not get back in time for the game at Breslin. And Paul Konerdijk was there, did a great job with Jake Laskawa covering that game for SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. If you're a new subscriber, it's only $1 for an introductory month. Give it a try. We're talking about the coaching search all the time over there at the Underground Bunker message board, people chiming in with things that they're hearing, and I'm responding to things that are being talked about out there in the Twitterverse and elsewhere, and also bringing information that I have from my sources. And so the coach search, that is Coach Search Central, the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. Go check it out. We'd love to have you become a longtime subscriber over there. We think you will like it. We appreciate all the longtime subscribers that we have. Also, in the meantime, give us a like here at this channel. And subscribe to this channel. It helps support everything that we do. So Konerdijk and Jake Laskawa, our great intern, did a great job covering that Michigan State-Tennessee game. Michigan State, of course, loses 89-88 on a funny foul call at the end of that game. But Paul and I, because I was not there, we didn't get a chance to really discuss the game, didn't get a chance to do a post-game VCast from courtside. So a little, keeping up with some shopkeeping and so forth. What did you think about, let's see, I got to send a call to voicemail. We've got a guest right now, so no phone calls. What did you think about Michigan State macro, about how they played against Tennessee on that day?
Well, I just think it was a really, really good event, and it was like super physical to the point where talking to players afterwards, they said that they've been in, been in Big Ten games that were less intense than this one. So for them to experience that, like in October, is something. And to me, going through that locker room afterwards, I mean, what it looks like back in the day when we covered Michigan State games against Purdue, the Gene Cady coach Purdue, and it looked like, that scene from Enter the Dragon when Bruce Lee has got like the three, the claw marks on his chest.
Yeah.
that's what it kind of looked like throughout the locker room. Guys have been like, bloodied and bruised and clawed up and whatnot. And that's kind of rare for this time of year, even in the high level non-conference games. Mm-hmm. So what these dudes experienced against a really physical Tennessee team, I think is really a great table setter for the season, particularly amongst those freshman guys, because that experience cannot be replicated in any kind of non-conference game that they'll face at home. They might play they will play some high-level non-conference games in the neutral setting, but that was fantastic.
Hold on, Paul. Looks like we've got a sound problem right now. I don't know. Can you hear? I don't know if they cannot hear me or if they can't hear Paul. I'll type it out there and get an answer. It takes about 45 seconds of delay for it to come back in. I might need you to call back because I had you on before we went live, and that might have upset the thing. Let's see. It looks like all my things are plugged in. I've got the on-air button. I've got this. I've got that. Oh wait. That wasn't plugged in. Maybe that did it. I didn't have one of my cords plugged all the way in. Let's see. And I can edit this out once it goes in. Jay Jr. says it sounds fine. So one guy, I got a call saying that he couldn't hear, but I think we're all right. So sounds fine. You're both fine, says, okay. All right, audio is good. Sorry about that. I got a text from one of our favorite callers that was saying, hey, he can't hear it. So it must be on your end. Not you, Paul, but the person that texted in. But I do appreciate the feedback in case there is a problem. But Paul, I apologize for interrupting you. Do you remember what you were talking about when I interrupted?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that the environment, the crowd was fantastic. It was better than a lot of Big Ten games. The physicality level was off the charts. It was equivalent of what you'd see in the NCAA tournament. So in terms of a learning experience for true freshmen, this is kind of unrivaled in my opinion. And we've seen some of these non-conference games or these exhibition games, like going back, like when Michigan State played Georgia in Grand Rapids. That was kind of cool, and that was pretty competitive, but nothing like this. And I think this is a great lesson for both teams, regardless of outcome. And I think a lot of times people put way too much stock in the dribble of what comes out of the exhibition, the closed exhibitions. But what I saw a lot of really good things from both teams, and the physicality piece that you really need to see. I think Michigan State measured up to that for the most part. And I just want to put this out there because I don't know how widely reported it's been. Mm-hmm. But in this game, there was you couldn't foul out. Mm-hmm. Tennessee had a player that had about 8 or 9 fouls. Mm-hmm. Well, Michigan State players did not know that ahead of time. Tennessee players did. So I don't know if that had any impact on the game, but it was better than any exhibition game I've ever seen, and it's probably better than most non-conference games that I've seen in terms of preparing them for the high stakes level of basketball that they need to play.
That's really interesting, and you know that Izzo and Rick Barnes have a lot of respect for one another because of the physicality, and they have interest. They're similar in their pregame scouting and self-scouting. So once they play one another, Izzo said that he would check back in with Rick Barnes after Rick went through the film. He'll ask Rick, what did you think of us? Where were we strong? Where were we weak? What did you know we were going to do? Those type of things. They do self-scouting because they are similarly cut from a similar cloth in terms of preparation, so they value each other's opinion. That's why they did the exhibition game behind closed doors last year. And that's why this one was scheduled to be behind closed doors. But then when the Maui tragedy happened, they got together and wanted to raise money for it, which is a great cause. All those things were good. And Paul, you did a great job breaking that information. The fact that Michigan State's players did not know that there was no foul out individual rule in this game. Tennessee players did. Now, Izzo and Barnes, Izzo doesn't like the 5 foul out rule. He doesn't like that, the best players are sidelined at all or at key moments of a game. He thinks that this should be a sport where that doesn't come into play. I don't know what the solutions would be. Maybe once someone gets their 6th foul, maybe it's 3 to make 2 at the free throw line, or maybe it's free throws and possession. I don't know what the penalty would be, but he hates that in this sport players have to go to the sideline. So it does not surprise me that he had spoken with Barnes and said, hey, let's just not let anyone foul out in this game. Keep your guys on, we'll keep my guys on, and let's just play. Because when you have a closed exhibition, nobody fouls out, and you might have a few sessions where okay, we're going to run 10 straight inbound plays, then you guys run 10 straight inbound plays. Now let's do 4 2 minutes and under situations. You can do that when it's closed. A situation like this for TV, they had to play a real game. And Izzo said going into it, once you're on TV and there's a crowd, he said, hey, the competitive juices are going to get flowing. And any thoughts that I had about maybe playing more people on the bench like I would do if this were closed and the final score doesn't really get reported, those things kind of go out the window. So I'm not surprised that Izzo wanted to eliminate the foul rule. Secondly, I'm not surprised that Izzo didn't tell his players, because he wouldn't want them to go out there and play where they think they don't have to foul out. Someone like Matty Sissoko, if you tell him, don't worry, you're not going to foul out, that's counterproductive to things that he needs to work on, which is conserving his fouls. It's interesting that the Tennessee players did know. And if you look at the first 7 minutes of that game, when Tennessee jumped out to that 17-1 lead, I thought Tennessee was extremely aggressive defensively, really getting into Michigan State's grill. And even though Michigan State starts 4 seniors and 1 junior, and they're immensely experienced, and they've got a lot of grown men on that team, they were kind of knocked off kilter, in my opinion, estimation, about how much Tennessee was into them defensively. One thing, Tennessee played a European tour in August, I think it was. I think in Italy, 3 or 4 games or whatever. That can really help you in October. Really help you if you've played games with your set team just a couple of months ago. Teams that play those international tours a lot of times are ahead of the grade in October and November, and I think that's part of what made Tennessee good on this day, even though they were without 2 of their better players. And the fact that they didn't have to worry about fouling out. Combine those 2 things, it really served as a great sparring partner for Michigan State to have an opponent come in and get into them defensively and really take the fight to them. And I thought that was a big, all those things combined to Tennessee getting that 17-1 lead, including Tennessee starting out red hot from 3-point range. Izzo was asked about it as the game was progressing, and he said, hey, they hit some shots. And in the huddle, he says, hey, they've hit some shots. Credit to them. What Izzo really means is, man, they hit some guys hit some shots they normally wouldn't make. And if we, they may make 3 or 4 here, but over the course of 100 shots, those percentages will even out. So Tennessee, to their credit, last year was not a good shooting team. I know they've added some different players, but they were uncharacteristically hot at the beginning of that game compared to what they were last year. So credit to them for making shots, credit to Tennessee for bringing a lot of physicality, and there were reasons that physicality knocked Michigan State off kilter. Michigan State adjusted to it, but what are your thoughts about what I just said and any of the merit to that?
Well, I think one of the things that, like what made it feel like an NCAA tournament game is like sometimes you do take that shot and teams are pretty well. I mean, teams that are in the NCAA tournament or that type of thing. Those type of teams are well coached. They know what you're going to do. What I liked about this is it kind of like reinforced what, and I know people get tired of me saying this over and over again, but like Michigan State doesn't have a replacement for Joey Hauser, and when you have a Tennessee team that takes away, like, that knows what you want to do, like Michigan State, it's really hard for them to run their offense against a very well coached defense. They don't have that stretch for. So I think one of the things that the Tennessee team did a really, really nice job of early on is, they made Michigan State work for some stuff. And they did a nice job taking away, some of the dribble penetration, some of the guard stuff. And they're long around the rim. They're long and athletic. You're talking about 6'5", 6'6", 6'7". A lot of guys, versatile defensive players. They've got rim protection. So, really, if you're taking away some of the primary stuff, you're taking away some of the penetration, and you don't have an outside, shooting threat from that 4 position, it made it really hard for Michigan State to get into its stuff. But what a treat for Michigan State to face this that early, because I really think that them facing Tennessee like that is going to prepare them for that, the first really big non-conference game against Duke. What they see against Duke is a good team and they've got some great players, but it's not going to be there's not going to be the wow factor that Michigan State faced in that exhibition game. In terms of like the raucous crowd, the adrenaline that comes from playing in the crowd against the crowd, the emotions. I mean, there were some times in this game where officials had to separate some guys, and it got almost downright nasty at times. This was a really, really, really intense game. Mm-hmm. It was physical, intense, and after watching this, I really wish that there would be more of these open exhibition games against top programs. I understand that the exhibition games, the way it is, really benefits small school programs, but this is a really cool thing, and I think, it it was like an NFL, like a preseason game, but there was an edge to it, man. It was awesome. You know how much I love those games that are physical and nasty, and this was that.
Mm-hmm. And Izzo does like to support some of the in-state Division II, Division III schools, Northern Michigan, Grand Valley. So if you take those out completely, that's $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, maybe more that aren't going to those programs. I'm not even sure what they're paying those programs these days, but Izzo likes to do that. But last year they had one exhibition against Grand Valley, I think, and then one closed against Tennessee last year. We know that one was very beneficial to both teams. I wonder if it was as edgy last year with no crowd and no TV as it was this year. Don't know.
Well, I found it really interesting. Some of the comments that Rick Barnes says afterwards. He's been an advocate to have up to three of these type of games in a public setting. That's what he would advocate. And then you can still do the small school stuff. I found it interesting that Tennessee didn't have a single exhibition prior to Michigan State. I think that's one of the things that helped them against Michigan State because they have so many new pieces. I don't think in terms of scouting, Michigan State was able to get a really accurate view of how everyone was going to work out there, or what their strengths and weaknesses might be. But I also thought that one of the most interesting things that Rick Barnes said afterwards is, hey, these public type exhibitions with high caliber teams are something that can really benefit officials, because there's it's a lot different officiating a close scrimmage in a practice gym as opposed to one in an arena that's entirely full and on television. And I thought the officials weren't ready for this type of game. Like early in the season, officials they're ready to call like ticky-tack screens on the perimeter. Mm-hmm. Well, you saw those guys trying to do that in this game, but then they're not ready for the physicality underneath and that type of thing. And so I think it was a learning experience for the officials as well, because this was something that as those guys do, they kind of build up to it, and this was like March level competitiveness in October.
That's a great point. They were calling a lot of illegal screens, but hand checks, not as many. Your thoughts real quickly on the foul on Trey Holloman in the final seconds. First of all, credit to Michigan State for the arduous comeback that they made over the course of 39 minutes or whatever it was, and finally drawing even late in the game. Good for Michigan State to have that test to come back against this team, but also that foul at the end.
Yeah, I felt bad for Trey Holloman because I thought he played a really, really good game. They don't. He did a lot of the stuff that doesn't show up in the stat sheet and helping them come back from that. And when I was talking about the officials just a second ago, those guys not being ready for the moment or having to get ready, I just don't feel like that's necessarily a foul that's going to get called in a lot of games. Like if this was a Big Ten game or this is an NCAA tournament game, I don't feel like they would blow that whistle in that situation, because they want to let the players decide this thing.
All right. So also Michigan State, you mentioned that there were elements of Tennessee's team that Michigan State they weren't keen on it because there was no video. And that's one of Izzo's secret sauces. That's one of Rick Barnes' secret sauces. And sometimes you'll see a freshman in November, early December, go off for big numbers at a game nationally, and people are like, man, that freshman at Memphis, he scored 35 points. And that'll happen until film gets out on that guy, and then things kind of come back down. As film gets out on a player, it becomes harder for that player. I think Michigan State benefited in that regard with Cohen Carr. Everybody knew that he was athletic and so forth, but Tennessee couldn't be sure as to where he would get his points with those diagonal lobs and so forth. So Cohen Carr was outstanding in this game with 9 points in 16 minutes, 4 rebounds, moving well on defensively most of the time, going to the offensive glass pretty well, but not as much as Izzo wants, more than he was doing when he came to the program. But I thought Cohen Carr was great, and he's going to have his share of lob dunks and highlight plays through the course of time, but that was something I think that Tennessee wasn't quite prepared for either. Your thoughts on Cohen Carr?
Yeah, Cohen Carr was awesome in this game, but Tennessee coach Rick Barnes afterwards said, "Hey, we know that they do those lob plays. We worked on that. A lot. But when you deal with that level of athlete, that's something you can't simulate in practice. You can try to take away those plays, and that might take away someone like a Jaden Akins or whatnot, but it doesn't take away a Cohen Carr. Cohen Carr was interesting because a lot of times when you play a team like a team like this, the freshmen, they might. I remember Miles Bridges against, was it Kentucky? Yeah, it was Kentucky he played against in the Champions Classic, and he had a terrible game. He wasn't ready for that moment. Cohen Carr is about to me, he was much more ready for a big moment like this than I've seen a lot of other Michigan State freshmen, and that to me impressed me quite a bit. The thing I found interesting is that Tennessee recruited Colin Carr quite heavily. I think they may have finished second or third for him in the whole thing. So Rick Barnes was very familiar going in, and his coaching staff were familiar going in with Colin Carr, and they knew what kind of a handful he was going to be. The thing that I've been impressed with Colin Carr is he's a lot more physical. And even the short amount of time that he's been in the weight room at Michigan State has really helped him get to that point where Michigan State is saying, hey, I think he can help us out at the 4 as well as the 3. And I think you might see some like Brandon Dawson 4-man type stuff with Colin Carr. And he's willing and he wants to be physical and he knows his role. So I think Colin Carr's got a great mindset. He enjoys playing his role and he understands that a huge offensive rebound, a tip dunk, a run out. Those are things that can really, really ignite the crowd. And we saw that firsthand in that exhibition game. Tennessee was up by a lot and, they're maintaining about a 10-point lead, 8 to 10-point lead in the second half. And then Colin Carr would make a big play and then that crowd would come to life. Mm-hmm. And it was a cool type of deal. The other thing I think that maybe this reinforces that, this game reinforces that Michigan State needs to find ways to get Tyson Walker the ball, and Tyson Walker needs to be more selfish with the ball because this is his team this year, and he needs to play for Michigan State to get where they want to go. He's got to be that Cassius Winston type player that can put the team on his shoulders when they need him to. But all of his teammates need to understand that as well, that there are times when Tyson Walker has to carry the team. And I think that was a learning experience for everyone as well against Tennessee.
Yeah, and Izzo mentioned during some in-game interviews, he says, all right, we're going to get the ball in Walker's hands now and go to work with him. I think that might have been in the midway point of the second half, and things did change at that point, and Walker went to work, ended up scoring 22 points, 8 out of 19 from the field, 4 out of 8 from three-point range. Walker was a grown man helping bring the team back. So he answered that call, and it's great for Michigan State to have that ace card in their hand to play that. I don't know if you want to ask him to do that for 40 minutes. Is there a wear down thing there? Do you want him taking more than 19 shots? Good questions. But Walker, served that purpose coming down the stretch. Jaden Akins with 6 assists, team high 6 assists. I didn't really realize that until I looked at the box score. Akins doing a little bit more off the dribble now, for better or worse. That's getting ironed out. But Akins with 6 assists, and Michigan State 47% from three-point range, shot really well from three-point range to enable this comeback. Your thoughts about Akins as a distributor in this particular game, and Michigan State shot well from the 3 as a team.
It was a sneaky assist total, Jim, and watching the game in person and going back and watching it. There wasn't a lot of really drive and kick type stuff, but Jaden Akins, did some good things in his passing. It was crisp on the perimeter. Frankly, they needed Jaden Akins or someone else besides Hogard or Fierce to do the assisting. This is a game where I believe A.J. Hogard had 2 assists. Yeah. And in Michigan State, when you were talking about the physicality in the beginning of that game, when Tennessee went out to an 18-1 run, I believe Tennessee assisted on 7 of their first 9 made field goals in that game, whereas Michigan State, I think during that first half, I think Michigan State might have had 4 or 5 assists, or up until the last 5 minutes in that game, or that first half. Hogard had a really tough time in this game setting the table for his teammates. And I felt like when he's not able to do that, there are times where he tries to play muscle ball. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you can necessarily do that against Tennessee at this time of the season. It's different maybe when you get into the end of the season and you kind of get a feel for that game. But Hogard's not used to driving in and making those kind of plays against that kind of physicality, precluding playing against his teammates. That's different than when you play against other teams. So, if you want to look at it, a lot of guys played well in this game. I think this game was something where A.J. Hogard needed to be a little bit better. I thought he was lacking a little bit on defense. I think that, he's got to refine that balance between being the table setter and then trying to make plays. It's a tough thing. It's a tough kind of balancing act when you play point guard. And then, the other guy that kind of really impressed me from a physicality standpoint, and I didn't know if he had it in him at this point, was Malik Hall. So whereas Malik Hall didn't hit the face-up jumpers that I was talking about earlier, that he's going to have to hit to play the stretch four role. I thought he did everything else in this game, and that was a big growing. It was a big growing moment for Malik Hall because
Yes.
this is a high level game, and he played with the physicality that you need a senior to play with in a game like this to be successful. And that was a big win for Michigan State. Seeing Malik Hall play with as much passion and fire as he brought to bear in the game throughout the minutes that he played.
That was, I'll let you go here in a minute. I know Paul needs to run, but to me, that was the number one development of this game. Malik Hall playing aggressively, because I was concerned about that with some practices I've seen and the exhibition against Hillsdale and the green-white exhibition and times I've seen them scrimmage in practice. He's a real good guy, and I think fans got even more of a sense for that during the in-game interview with Malik Hall on the bench. A good guy, team guy, earnest personality. I have a lot of respect for him. But I'd seen it happen several times in this preseason where it looked to me like he was overly passive. And Izzo has said a couple times during the preseason, we need to get more out of Malik Hall. I'm going to say it publicly, so he kind of challenged Malik Hall. For Malik Hall to show up in this game with all the physicality and the intensity and to turn it up a notch and end up scoring 14 points, a team-high 11 rebounds, really good sign that Malik Hall, that light is still on. And Izzo's always like, hey, man, we need you to be the guy. You can be the guy. You can do this type of thing. That's what goes on with Malik. Now, that being said, there was that one play that Michigan State ran. I don't know all the specifics, but maybe about a minute 45 left. Michigan State down maybe 2 or 3 or 4, and Michigan State kind of gets penetration and then secondary penetration. Tennessee rotates on defense, and the ball comes out to Malik Hall for an open three-pointer. It's a brief open window, but that's the shot Joey Hauser would let fly and make at a high percentage. That's what Michigan State needs from that stretch four. You and I have talked about it all preseason. We will talk about it all season. That's what Michigan State needs to make the entire operation go. And Izzo said afterwards, he said, we passed up an open three-pointer. He's talking about Malik, but he's not going to criticize Malik publicly because Malik needs to stay confident and so forth. But they will demonstrate to him, you've been here for 4 years. You know that we need this shot launched. We need you to make it. You're the guy. You can play defense. You can rebound. You can communicate. You can do all these things for us. And you've shot well in the past. When that ball comes to you, we need you to make that shot and take it. Don't shy away from that. Do you know which play I'm talking about? And that, although Malik played really well, that unchecked box right there is still an area of growth for him at this late senior stage of his career. Do you know which play I'm talking about? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote about that afterwards. In my 3-2-1. As well as he did play. His first shot in the game was an open three in the corner. And that's a shot that he, to me, kind of flinched on. He shot it because he was open and he knew he had to shoot it. But I feel like he still has to get confidence in that three and in his face-up jumper. I do feel like watching him warm up. I watched him warm up in the 3 or 4 minutes they do shoot around before the second half. And it's something that he has to get going. I like the way his jumper looked, but there's a hesitancy to pull the trigger on that, and it's not going to go in if you hesitate. And on that play you're talking about, he got the ball and he was open, and instead of letting it fly, he dribbled into traffic and ended up in Tennessee's hands. He's got to make that shot. People got to get Tyson Walker the ball in those late game instances. I personally believe, after watching him play and the steps that he took, I think it's a process. I think he will get to the point where he can hit those face-up jumpers. This is a guy that shot, as for a career, he shot 35% plus from three. When he's been the starting four, he shot even at a higher level. I just think he's a guy that runs well with the face-up jumper when he's confident. But when he's not, it's off and it gets in his head. He's got to find a way to get past that mental block the way Joey Hauser was able to. He's not going to ever be the Joey Hauser face-up threat, right, but he doesn't need to be. He needs to be enough of a face-up jumper threat where Michigan State can stretch the floor a little bit.
I agree. Great stuff, Paul. I'll let you go. Thanks, and don't eat all your Halloween candy in one setting today. Thanks for your contributions, and I'll talk to you soon. Anything else?
I could run through a wall right now. I've eaten a bunch of Take Fives. I know that you don't do the Take Five thing with gluten allergy, but man, Jim turned me on to the Take Five candy bar about 10 years ago.
Yes.
And I will always give you credit for that.
Yeah.
And I always love you for making me a Take 5 believer. My son loves those candy bars. I've eaten about 8 of those today, so I could run through a wall, and I'm just waiting to crash.
Yeah, Take 5. You're welcome on that. And in my pre-gluten-free days, yeah, the Take 5 candy bar was one of the great discoveries in the history of mankind. In my life, it's a combination of a pretzel with the salt in there. Then you have the caramel and the chocolate. No nougat. I don't do nougat. I don't know about you. I do a little bit with Milky Way. Milky Way a little bit, but and Snickers has some nougat. I think nougat is it's.
But you know what, Jim?
I don't want to dump on the nougat people, but Take 5 is outstanding for those of you that have not tried it. Go ahead, Paul.
To me, since I learned about the Take 5. The Snickers bar has become the redheaded stepchild of my candy family.
Wait, what? Why?
I just don't like Snickers as much as Take 5, man. It's just like,
it's like
I'm
sure
it's
I'm
like
going
I
out there
love
right
all,
now.
I love almond joy. It's like I love almond joy, but I'm not going to eat mounds because it doesn't have an almond in there. Take 5 has got that pretzel, and it knocks the Snickers bar off that hierarchy. It's fantastic. But I've got to run, otherwise I'll be late for a radio show.
All right. Well, all right, I'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot, Paul. Paul's just he's just taunting me because I'm also allergic to tree nuts, and I don't appreciate the Mounds almond reference because I do eat Mounds. I like coconut, and I can't eat Almond Joy because it's got almonds, tree nuts in there. So he's just taunting me on that, and I don't appreciate that. That's not nice. That's not playing fair. In the meantime, I've made the transition not only to Payday, but the chocolate-covered Payday, which I think is a new thing in the candy bar realm. And that currently is my number one candy bar in the candy bar. The mainstream candy bar power rankings. I know that there are some craft candy bars out there, if you will, and I'm still partaking of those. I try not to eat too many, but good for Paul to be loading up and overdosing on the Take 5 candy bar, the most underrated candy bar in the business. All right, let's go to let's check it out. We'll go to the mailbag, and we will get to the coach talk here in a moment. Question number one before we get to the before I get to the comments, feel free to make comments over there in the comment section. Let us know where you're checking in from, and we will address some questions over there. Question number one, Scram from Cincinnati. By the way, these questions were posted at the Underground Bunker message board over at SpartanMag.com. The Underground Bunker message board is the church of what's happening now with Michigan State sports. It is the daily narrative on all things Michigan State, Spartans, and campus happenings of all categories. Underground Bunker message board. It's open to premium subscribers, SpartanMag.com subscribers. Get over there, become a subscriber. $1 introductory rate for a month. And we think that you'll like SpartanMag.com. If you're interested in this nonsense, talking about Michigan State sports, aside from the candy bar banter, then I know that you would appreciate SpartanMag.com. Get over there, check it out, $1 for a month. Also give us a like here on this channel, subscribe to this channel, all that stuff helps. These questions were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board. Scram from Cincinnati, as Sparky Anderson would say, he says, he gets right to it. He says, Jim, are you remaining at 33% to land Urban Meyer? Because I'd always been between like 5%, 15%, and then below 5%, then back up to 15. And then Monday night, I think it was, went up to 20, heard some things from some good sources, and then up to 30. And then some other precincts came in from the sub-theater of sources, moved it up to 33%. And people, I'm usually conservative with percentages, but for good reason, because a lot of this has to do, if all these other things are true, and I know that some of them are true and some of them is smoke, and even if all those things are on target, I still don't know. If those things are true, we don't know if Urban Meyer would actually go ahead and push it across the goal line and say, okay, yeah, I want to do this. So that's why I don't know what's in his head. I've heard some things from people that have access to his realm, some pretty close access. But needless to say, there's a lot of Michigan State fans that are really, really interested and excited about the prospect of Urban Meyer possibly becoming Michigan State's head coach. And that's going to happen with any head coaching vacancy. It's the fans' job to get excited about some candidate that's not available to them. And initially I thought that was the case with Urban Meyer, but some things have happened that have made the dialogue a back and forth volley. And that's been the case for a while. We've talked about that. So a lot of interest there. A lot of people with opposite opinions on that, including some people, at the university. But I moved it up to 33%. So you're asking me, am I still at 33%? If not, where are you today? Thank you. Yeah, I am still at 33%, which you don't have to be a math major to know is less than 50%. That's the way that works. If you're asking me what my whole breakdown is, I would go, 33% Meyer, 15% the field. That's 15% the field. And I would go 52% is the block of Jonathan Smith, Mike Elko, Matt Campbell, and now Lance Leipold. I've heard from one source that Leipold will be under consideration. I don't know why he wouldn't have been previously. Just guessing at this point, but the 59-year-old age would have to be a concern there if you're Alan Haller and looking at candidates. I'm guessing he's not told me that. Now, of course, Urban Meyer is 59, but he's in a class of his own. You might waive that with some people. Lance Leipold doing a great job at Kansas, and he's somebody that we had on the initial coach watch list at SpartanMag.com. Been very impressed with what he did at Wisconsin Whitewater, and then what he did at Buffalo, building that up and being the best team in the MAC. Going to Kansas, taking over a dumpster fire, just a terrible situation there. Arguably the worst program in Power 5 at that point. Went 1-11 in year one, understandably. We talked about that in previous Spartan Mag Lives. A lot of great coaches have gone 1-10 in year number one, including Kirk Ferentz, something like that, his first year at Iowa. There's been a lot of them. And then, what was he, 6-7 last year or 7-6? Made a real nice jump last year out of the gutter. And then this year, quarterback gets hurt, and with a backup quarterback, beats Oklahoma last week. I can't remember what they lost 40-20 or something like that to Texas with a backup quarterback, which some people thought it was a bad mark for him. No, that's not a bad mark. You're outmanned at all 22 positions, and he still did pretty well. They destroyed Illinois earlier in the year. Yeah, I've talked to Big Moobie about this, our esteemed colleague, Ron Armstrong, and he likes the way Kansas's people look, the players look, the sizes, the way they move. And I still need to study Kansas some more, but of all these teams that we've been watching and the unofficial coach watch, Kansas and Duke, to me, are the two best coached teams. Even though Duke has lost 2 in a row, their schedule has been very difficult. And what Duke has done with a challenged roster is they are a well-coached team. I've not watched the Louisville game yet, but over at the Underground Bunker message board on game day on Saturday, I was talking about Oregon State against Arizona and Duke against Louisville as potential losses for Michigan State coaching candidates. And that did turn out to be the case. Louisville was coming off a maddening loss to Pittsburgh, in which I think they had twice as many yards as Pittsburgh, but also lost that game on turnovers. They were very angry at themselves losing their undefeated record. They had a bye week, coming back home with good talent and a very good head coach in Jeff Brom. Meanwhile, Duke had played Florida State on the road, so it's road, then road. And Duke, I think Duke was going to beat Florida State if their quarterback, Riley Leonard, had not gotten hurt in the late third quarter. They were up 3 and going in when he was hurt, and the backup quarterback, it's a severe drop-off for Duke University when they go to their second-string quarterback. And I think they were in position to beat number 5 Florida State on the road, which would have been a hugely significant win for Duke and also Mike Elko as a coaching candidate. That might have actually hurt Michigan State's chances of getting him. The players didn't get it done, but was Duke well coached against Florida State? Absolutely. I haven't watched the Louisville game yet. Riley Leonard tried to play hurt. It was a bad timing situation for Duke, going on the road after those challenging games, had played Notre Dame, and then someone else, maybe NC State, then Florida State. A third very tough game in 4 weeks. Might have been 5 weeks with a bye in there, and you're playing at Louisville, coming off a bye week, coming off their loss to Pittsburgh. Very good Louisville team. That was not good timing for Duke. So some people are like, oh man, that hurts Elko's candidacy. No. So, I've been doing this for a long time, and every time there's a coaching vacancy at Michigan State and we start looking, the public observers, start looking at possible potential coaching candidates, especially early in the process, you get high on a candidate, but they're going to lose games. You know why? Because they play football games and they keep score, and somebody loses games. And usually when you're looking at a candidate that might be looking at Michigan State, chances are they are not coaching at Oklahoma or LSU or Texas or Georgia that already has Rolls-Royce talent and they just win every week. Usually it's someone like the great Mark D'Antonio, who was at Cincinnati doing what he could there. And I remember once he became a candidate, they had a game 1 or 2 weeks afterward where they played Rich Rodriguez in West Virginia, a top 10 team, and they were destroyed like 45-24. The great Mark D'Antonio. Did that hurt his candidacy? Actually, it kind of did a little bit as they were looking, because you have to win the press conference these days, right? They got it back by beating Rutgers and then squeaking out that game against UConn I've talked about in the past. Urban Meyer is a guy I had my eye on way back in 2002 when Bobby Williams was fired, when Urban Meyer was the best head coach in the MAC. And I've always believed that whoever the best coach is in the MAC, if you're Michigan State and you've got a job opening in any sport, you look at the MAC and say, okay, who's the current best coach? Are they a candidate? Would they fit here? I mean, Alan Haller essentially landed on that when hiring Robin Freilich out of Bowling Green to be women's basketball coach. Urban Meyer was the best coach in the MAC in 2002. But go back and look at it. The great Urban Meyer, who won a national championship at Ohio State, 2 national championships at Florida, one of the great college football coaches in the last 50 years. Go back and look at how he ended his career at Bowling Green, when he was, in my estimation, a likely candidate for the job, although he was never called by Ron Mason at the time. But the best coach in the MAC has to be a candidate. And when we were doing Coach Watch list back then, I was watching Urban Meyer. I had the old VCR. Remember VCRs? I was recording the Bowling Green Coaches Show, I think on PASS, Pro-Am Sports, Detroit area coaches show. I think that's where it was airing. I was recording the Urban Meyer show every week, Bowling Green, just to get a feel for him. Because I thought for sure he'd be a candidate, and he should have been. Mason didn't call him. Mason said he didn't want to hire somebody that was just going to be looking to move on at some point, so he never even looked into it, assuming that Meyer would be moving on. I think that's flawed philosophy, but we can talk about that another day. My point is, I was watching Meyer closely back then, and at Bowling Green, he lost 3 of his last 4 games as head coach at Bowling Green. As great as he is, as great as he became, even Urban Meyer lost 3 of his last 4 there. So when Mike Elko loses at Louisville, do I think that takes some shine off of him? No, absolutely not. All right, so those are my percentages. Take that for what's worth. Question number 2 from Marshall, Michigan, the city of hospitality. We've got a nameless person. He tells me where he's from. I didn't write down his name. I apologize. But he says, what are the snap percentages for Michigan State's quarterbacks this weekend against Nebraska? Who takes the first snap? Okay, good. Good question. Got an actual football question there. We'll get back to the coach thing here in a minute. But I'm glad to see that this gentleman from the city of hospitality, Marshall, Michigan, is interested in actual football talk. And the quarterback position thing continues to be interesting at Michigan State. And basically, I mean, you saw Caden Hauser against Rutgers, against Michigan, against... Where was I this weekend? Minneapolis against Minnesota. It didn't look so good. And Caden Hauser, limitations. I still wonder about the weather factor there. I mean, it was cold there. It was 33 degrees, 32 degrees. Wind was blowing. I know it's his second year in the Midwest, but it's the first time he's ever been a quarterback. Anything, as a starting quarterback, anything below 55 degrees. I mean, this guy's from Las Vegas, Southern California. He mentioned the game at Rutgers was the first time he'd ever played a game in the rain. Is that a factor? Yes. I think that was a factor for C.J. Stroud at Ohio State and the 2 losses against Michigan, in addition to the sideline signal scandal, which I think had a big impact on Michigan and Ohio State. But C.J. Stroud and his receivers were not good in cold weather either. So I think that's a part of it with Caden Hauser. Do I think that is all Caden Hauser will ever beat? No. Do I think what we saw out of Noah Kim, that's all he'll ever beat? No. Sam Levitt has looked good, made some mistakes, on that 1st and 10 interception late in the game against Minnesota. But they're learning. These are young quarterbacks. They all have ability. Not all of them are going to remain at Michigan State, I wouldn't think. But I'm not saying that's all that you'll ever see out of Caden Hauser. I think he can progress from there, but I think Levitt is better right now. With the quick feet, zip, pretty good with the reads. But basically at Michigan State all year, it's been quarterback tryouts. It's been quarterback auditions all year. and I made this point in the bunker a couple days ago. Hey, Peyton Thorne had a good game for Auburn against Mississippi State this weekend. What was he, like 20 out of 26 for 275 yards, and they won. And people on the message board are saying, man, Peyton Thorne hasn't done anything. He hasn't thrown for any yardage at Auburn. Yeah, his yardage has been a little bit low, but he's been split in time. If you go by per pass attempt, he's I posted it, but I can't remember what it was. I think he's number 5 or 4. I think number 5 in the SEC in yards per pass attempt. Yards per pass attempt it's the stat. You know, people talk about quarterback rating, NFL quarterback rating, pass efficiency rating. That's important too, I guess. But Peyton Thorne did not play poorly last week, and he's getting used to the Hugh Freeze offense and all that, so that's an adjustment as well. Peyton Thorne was not great at Michigan State, but he was good, especially in 2001. Go back and look at what he did in the snow, 4th and 1, the pass to Jaden Reed. I know Jaden Reed's an NFL receiver, but any quarterback that looks good is working with NFL receivers at the Power 5 level pretty much. The pass he made in the snow on 4th and 1 to beat Penn State. The passes he made 3rd down, 4th down to beat Michigan in 2001. 2-point conversion, bringing Michigan State back. 4th quarter against Pittsburgh, against a good defense in the Peach Bowl. Good quarterback. Not great, but not as bad as Michigan State fans think. And it's not just Michigan State fans. Fans in any fan base, they like to crap on their own quarterback anytime you have to punt. They blame the quarterback. If you've been here long enough, you remember when Michigan State fans were critical of Kirk Cousins. He's not good. I remember being on a show like this and saying, yeah, I hear that people don't like Kirk Cousins as Michigan State's quarterback. I remember having this conversation with the great Jillian Van Stratch, who was my podcast co-host for a number of years back then. And I said, okay, Kirk Cousins is not great. He's good at Michigan State. If he's not good, I mentioned that to Michigan State fans, well, who in the Big Ten is better than Kirk Cousins back then? And at that time, maybe Russell Wilson, who was in year number 1 at Wisconsin. And we didn't know that he was going to become the Russell Wilson, but in the Big Ten at that time, that was the only quarterback that was arguably better than Kirk Cousins. Yet, Kirk Cousins was the subject of severe criticism at Michigan State. So was Brian Hoyer, NFL quarterback, to the point that Brian Hoyer's father, the great Axel Hoyer, became testy quite often with Spartan Maggers. And I had to say, Axel, hey man, it's cool. Don't bother with a bunker. Just go over to Dagwoods, get something to eat, maybe some refreshments. It's going to be all right. It's all right. So, Peyton Thorne, what he had is the thing that these 3 talented quarterbacks lack, and that's experience. And it's so valuable at that position. So, one of the big mistakes of Michigan State football for 2023 was not shepherding Peyton Thorne out of spring practice, getting him healthy, and letting him come back and be on this team this year. Because the result has been quarterback tryouts. And you can see it. You can see flashes of talent, but it's not enough to play winning football. Noah Kim with the interceptions against Maryland. Caden Hauser's shortcomings against Rutgers. Put the Michigan game aside. And then I think if Leavitt plays the whole game against the Gophers, I think Michigan State wins that game. But it's auditions and then shortcomings born out of inexperience. Inexperience is something that many college football programs have to endure on a cyclical nature. That's why you see some programs go up and down. The Rolls-Royce programs can just trot out another NFL quarterback every time, Georgia, Alabama, and be good and move forward. Others, they'll have dips because at some point experience becomes a factor. And Michigan State right now is having a dip for various reasons, one of them being inexperience at quarterback, and it is a shortcoming that Michigan State did not have to have this year. When Mel Tucker moved on and was suspended and then fired, I was very respectful of him because he was respectful of us at SpartanMag and in the media. As a person, I enjoyed being around him. As a coach, I thought he did a lot of good things well, was very ambitious in some ways, and set out to do some things. I thought that was all well and good. I said it back then that when Thorne left the program and Michigan State kind of allowed it to happen, I said back then, that is a miscalculation. And they were high on Noah Kim and his ability, as they should be. He does have good ability. What we didn't know is once he got hit against Washington, the pocket presence was not so good. And in terms of experience, turning the ball over, I think that he would improve in those areas with more work. But this season, as it was unfolding, Michigan State did not have the luxury of staying with him. They had to lose patience with him, move on to Hauser for various reasons. So it all ends up being quarterback tryouts. It didn't have to be that way. That was a miscalculation back then. And Tucker did a good job previously of keeping all the quarterbacks in the program. Noah Kim being here in year number 4, that's a credit to Tucker to keeping him engaged. We still like you. We want to develop you. Your time is coming. And Noah Kim, he could have transferred to James Madison 2 years ago. I say that theoretically. I don't know for sure that James Madison was coming after him. But I always said, hey, Noah Kim is pretty good. And if he ever leaves Michigan State, he'll go to a school like James Madison and be good. Okay, still might happen, might not. I don't know. But to Tucker's credit, he managed to keep Noah Kim engaged. Even Hampton Fay, quarterback who didn't work out at Michigan State, they kept him for 2.5 years, moved him to tight end, did a good job keeping him engaged. At the quarterback position, it's in your best interest to keep that pool of talent as deep as possible as you move along. And he did a good job with that, keeping Noah Kim around, Hampton Fay, for better or worse, keeping him around. Hey, he kept Peyton Thorne around, even though he went and got Anthony Russo out of the portal in that first year. But this time, there was a failure to keep the quarterback pool intact. And I think it would have been, and I've talked to some insiders that are close to the Thorne family, okay? And they say Peyton Thorne loved Michigan State, didn't want to leave. But things were happening, and communication with Tucker came to a standstill. If not during spring practice, shortly after spring practice. I know that for a fact. This part is conjecture. I'm guessing that Thorne at some point was like, why aren't these guys talking to me? Are they not, am I not going to be starting and they're not telling me where this is? I've seen this movie before. People are on me in the portal, tampering before he went into the portal, just a little bit. Not Auburn, from what I hear. So he goes in, ends up at Auburn, and a lot of people are like, oh, he's going to do terribly at Auburn. Well, he hasn't been great. They've lost some games, but he hasn't been bad. And he's starting to get some traction there. I think Auburn's going to go 7-5. You're going to watch Peyton Thorne play in a bowl game. And if he were still at Michigan State right now, even with all that's happened this year, I think they're 4-3. All right. And Michigan State's losing these games. I'll say it a number of times. They're not losing these games because of talent. But the quarterback position is a shortcoming, and that is talent. But across the board, they're not getting out-talented, to create a verb, by Rutgers, Maryland, Minnesota. So that's a further negative against, in one sense, the coaching, but also some of the things that are coming unraveled, just the distractions in general. All right, let's go over here to the comments area, and we'll get back to the coach thing here in a moment. Clark Merrier checking in first. M. Smith says, let's go, Jim. Thomas Kohlberg, Old Tuck, the bell cow from Austin, he's here. And Rob South. Man, we got some all-stars in the starting 5 today. Clark Merrier, he's running the point. We got Old Tuck down low. Rob South, he's stroking the deep one from 3 at the 2 guard. Thomas Kohlberg, he's a stretch 4. M. Smith is our guy running the right lane transition that they're starting 5. Mark Henfrey from the board. Thanks, Mark Smith. Bell Houston from Gladwin. Fleet wants to talk about Urban Meyer. Joe J10 from East Lansing. Joel J says 38%. Jim, not quite. Not so fast, my friends. Robert Nocera from Greensboro, North Carolina. Stu Redmond. Old Tuck from Austin. He says, is Haller going to take Urban up to Thanksgiving only to have him decline and MSU ends up with Mike Tressel in a panic? Good question. I mean, if Urban goes that long, Michigan State will continue to operate in the other theater. And that would be very interesting if it comes down to that. I suspect the Urban Meyer thing will get settled one way or another, by mid-November. So I don't think it'll go all the way to Thanksgiving. Urban Meyer could come out tomorrow and say, I am not interested in the Michigan State job. Something he hasn't done. He said, I'm not coaching again. And he went into specifics, which back then I was like, man, those are some specifics. Those are some personal specifics. When he talked about health problems he had, and he came out and said he had an addiction to sleeping pills. And to me, that sounded like a man that listed a list of pros and cons, and the cons were too heavy as a family decision. And he said, okay, I'm not doing this. And that's when I dropped it down to below 3%, below 1%. Other people are like, hey, it's just a negotiation thing. I'm like, I don't know. But then I heard people from the industry that said, no, there's still something going there. And then some more smoke billowed up. And anyway, Mike Tressel, I assume you're being facetious with that. Mike Tressel at one point in time might have been a candidate for this job. If D'Antonio had retired rather in February, if he had retired in August of that year, if he'd gone into that season in 2020 and said, during training camp, this is going to be my last year, and that would have put Michigan State in a situation, or even he could have just retired right then, like Dean Smith did when he pushed Bill Guthridge in. I think Tressel would have been in the running at that point, but now with things wide open, not so much. I assume you're being facetious. All due respect to Mike Tressel, but no, they won't end up with him. He would be in the field in this, but I don't think so. No. Daniel Barry, Sports Highlights, says hello. The Untitled Beer Ranking Show says, is anyone else not hearing this? We did get the audio thing cleared up if there was a problem. All right, let's go. And a lot of people checking in saying they can hear just fine. Jonah Wilson says, are we at 38%, Jim? No, I'm sticking at 33%. All right, Trenton Sabo from Charlotte, North Carolina says, Jason Candle has not had a losing season at Toledo, and now he is 8-1. Why haven't I been hearing his name in the articles for the football coaching search? I think we have been including him. Noah Sprunger's been doing a really good job with the Coach Watch updates each week, coming out of a weekend and going into a weekend. I'm pretty sure we've included Jason Candle in there, and I certainly included him in the candidates at the outset, soon after Mel Tucker was fired. And I went on a rant on this show about 3 weeks ago saying if you think that Michigan State is above hiring a group of 5 coach, you're drunk. It's hard to get a coach. I think I cited the statistics. I think there's been 65 coaching openings in the Power 5 level since 2018 or 2019, the last 6 years basically. I mean, there's only 64 programs in the Power 5, and there's been 65 openings. That means a number of programs have come open twice, including Michigan State now. Michigan State has not finished their current search, of course, but Colorado came open twice. Of those 65, coaching hirings, only 9 of the 65 Power 5 hirings have been a case of an existing successful Power 5 coach going to another Power 5 school. Only 9 times, and I listed them. It's like USC hiring Oklahoma's coach, LSU hiring Notre Dame's coach. These have been the type of heavyweight hirings. Michigan State hiring Colorado's coach. He wasn't successful at Colorado. But it's rare to go from one Power 5 school to another. Because usually if you're at a Power 5 school, unless you're going to a heavyweight, you've kind of hit a ceiling to the point where it usually does not make sense to go from Purdue to Louisville as a head coach. But it did for Jeff Brom because he's a Louisville alum, wanted to get something going there, and he probably thought he had hit his ceiling at Purdue. Louisville's not a big step up from Purdue. It's not a step up at all. But that's an alum going home. So it's rare to look around the country and expect to get a Power 5 school to come to your Power 5 school if you're Michigan State. Michigan State is like a second-tier program, and I mentioned that and laid that out when we first started covering this several weeks ago. The top tier, the top 20 programs in the country, there's really like 18 heavyweights. That includes the nuclear powers at the top and the ones, and you know who those guys are, right? Georgia, Alabama, LSU, Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Texas, USC. You know those, right? Then you get that next group that are, I would consider, the top 18. Texas A&M, Auburn, because of their resources and recruiting area, Miami of Florida, Florida State. There's 18 of them. You know who they are. And then I threw in UCLA in there because they've not had great success over the years, but Chip Kelly went there for a reason. And they've been really good at other checkpoints in history. They've got the potential to be a sleeping giant. I put them above Michigan State, even though Michigan State has outproduced UCLA by a ton in the last 15 years. And I put Nebraska in there because of where they've been in the past. All right, those were the top 20, and you can argue with those. But basically, those are the top 20. And I've got Michigan State in the next 10 schools that think of themselves as top 25 programs. Michigan State, South Carolina, Missouri, Iowa, Wisconsin, Washington, those type of schools. Oklahoma State. And then the schools that are 30 to 64, that's everybody else. That's, Mississippi State. I've got a very interesting question here. A very, very interesting caller coming in. And I don't know if he's calling the show right now. I'll have to call him back. I've got to text him and say I'm on the air right now. Sorry for the delay, but I needed to get back to him. All right, I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, Toledo. So only 9 of the 65 hirings are Power 5 to Power 5. And the rest were Group of 5 hirings. Florida State hired a guy from the Group of 5. Ole Miss hired a guy from the Group of 5, albeit Lane Kiffin, but he came from the Power 5. Been a number of others. Missouri hired Drinkwitz from Appalachian State from the Power 5. And, and some of those other schools hired coordinators from college, and a small handful took assistant coaches from the NFL, like Illinois taking Brett Bielema from the NFL. The Group of 5, that's where you get coaches from, and we went over the ones that have been successful currently in the Power 5, in the Group of 5. Most of them are old or Southern. There's a small one or two that, the best one right now might be Jamie Chadwell at Liberty, but he's very Southern, nothing against that, but he might not be. There's snow on the ground in East Lansing right now, and the recruiting territory is different. Might not be a good fit, might not be able to really recruit in the Midwest through no fault of his own. I think he's going to do really well somewhere someday. He might not be hip to wanting to go to Michigan State and vice versa. And Jason Candle is right there with him. Did a really good job taking over for Matt Campbell initially, had like a 9-3 season. Went down to about 500, then built it back up, which I think is a good thing. Going up and down is not a bad thing. Unless you're at Georgia or Alabama or Ohio State, you're going to go down and up and down. Even the great cheating Jim Harbaugh went down at Michigan a couple times. But, and I've mentioned this before, in terms of comparing programs, Mike Gundy's been really good at Oklahoma State. He's gone up, and he's had some 6-6s, then back up, then some 6-6s, then back up. Barry Alvarez did it. Kirk Ferentz did it. Mark D'Antonio did it. If you go down, it's not a bad thing, as long as you come back up. Candle went down, and then now he's last year 9-4, and then this year it looks like he's having his best team. He's, 45 years old. They won last night. I've always had him on the list as, if you're going to go Group of 5, he's the guy that makes the most sense. The recruiting, his knowledge of recruiting in the Ohio area, which is so important for this program. I talked about that last week. Very important. And it's something Mel Tucker did poorly at Michigan State. I made the point that there's only 6 players on the roster from Ohio right now. When Nils called last week, we went over it. 6 scholarship players on the roster right now from Ohio out of 85. That's I'm not going to say negligence. That's Michigan State not taking advantage of some low-hanging fruit nearby. You have to be combing Ohio and have great relationships with the coaches down there so that when they say, hey, man, we played against that guy Le'Veon Bell from Groveport. I don't know if anyone's recruiting him, but that dude's a dude. They heard that from other coaches. Otherwise, they don't recruit Le'Veon Bell. I know that's just one player, but you have to have your ear to the ground in Ohio. And this coaching staff, due to the leadership of Mel Tucker and his philosophy to recruit positionally rather than regionally, did not have their ear to the ground in Ohio. You have to have your ear to the ground in Ohio and tell all the coaches that you know in Ohio, send your players to our camp in June. We're going to have 4 camps, 3 in June, 1 in July. Send your players. We're going to take a look at them, and we'll have coaches there from Western Michigan, from Toledo, from Akron, and Saginaw Valley State, and Grand Valley State, and Northern Michigan. If we don't get your guy a scholarship, we will look at him But those other schools, and then next thing you know, you've got 400 people at your camp. Not that many, but your elite campers, 120 of them, and maybe only 10 of them are scholarship guys at Michigan State. But the word gets out, go to Michigan State's camp, go to Michigan State's camp. And then you show up at camp as a coach one day, and there's this guy, Benny Fowler, you've never heard of. Who's that dude in the gold helmet? Where's he going to school? Country Day? What's his deal? Oh, he's a quarterback, single wing quarterback, but he's out here playing wide receiver, and he's better than the guy we've got a commitment from. Who's that guy right there from Indiana? What's his name? Josiah Price? I mean, we've got a guy here at camp that we've already gotten a commitment from who's pretty good, but that guy's better than this guy. Trey Waynes? Who? He's from Wisconsin? Never heard of this guy. I got him at 4.4 in the 40. Is that what you guys got? What? Can he move his feet? Go look at his film. That's what happens when you run a camp the right way. I could talk more about what went wrong at Michigan State's camp in recent years, but it was just not utilized the way it's been in the past. All that being said, Michigan State's current roster is not bad. They're not losing these games on talent. They're losing games because everything is kind of unraveled for obvious reasons. If things had not come unraveled and Tucker were still here and Thorne was still the quarterback, Michigan State would be 4-3, 5-2 right now. But it might be heading eventually in a stagnant direction. So even though what's happening now gives you a chance to change train tracks, and you might be better off depending on who you hire. But I've got great respect for Jason Candle. And I gathered that in the Detroit area it became like a sticking point. Like Michigan fans were telling Michigan State people, why don't you just hire Jason Candle? And it becomes like offensive. Like it becomes like, even people in the media are saying, don't tell me about Jason Candle. We're a better program than that. Get over yourselves. You're Michigan State. It's a good program. It's not Texas, okay? And it's no shame to hire a group of 5 coach when they're good. And this guy happens to be at a good age. He's gone up, down, then back up. He was there when Matt Campbell was building it. He's taking it over. And right now, what if they go 12-1? And they beat Hugh Freeze's Liberty in a bowl game last year, by the way. Now, Hugh Freeze had already moved on, so it wasn't the real full blast Liberty, but Toledo beat Liberty last year. Now Chadwell's coaching Liberty. He's doing a real good job. But Candle's going to get his job somewhere, going to get his chance somewhere. There's a good chance he's going to do well. I also looked at the trends, talked about this on previous shows, that of the, I can't remember if I looked at the entire Power 5 or just the bottom tier. I don't know, but bottom line is, I think I looked at the entire Power 5, and there were only like 15 programs. I had these numbers committed to memory, but I'll give you the point. I don't have the exact numbers, but there were a small number of programs that have not changed coaches since 2018. I don't remember the exact numbers, like 15 or 20. There's very few. Might have been like 15. And of those, 5 were hired from the MAC. And they've not done great, but they've done well. And those are the head coaches at North Carolina State, Iowa State, Syracuse, Minnesota. There was one other. But, Iowa State did well with Matt Campbell to the point where he was really hot back in 2020. Now he's gone down a little bit. Now this year, is he bouncing back up? Might be in the process of that. Great Ohio ties there as well. Dino Babers had a 10-win season at Syracuse, up and down. Dave Doran has done a real good job at North Carolina. He's never had that 10-win season, but a lot of 9-win seasons, to the point that he was in the top 3 last year at Nebraska, according to my colleague in Lincoln, Sean Callahan, who does a great job covering the Huskers Online. He says they hired Matt Rule, obviously, at Nebraska, but the top 3 were Rule, Lance Leipold, and Dave Doran. Those were the 3 finalists at Nebraska last year. So Doran was a MAC hire. Matt Campbell was a MAC hire. Dino Babers was a MAC hire. Oh, Dave Clawson at Wake Forest. Been hugely successful there for a program that has limited resources. MAC hire. And then the 5th one I've forgotten again already. Anyway, the point is, there's a good track record of getting the best coach out of a MAC, and he's not going to crap the bed. I hope I didn't get too unsavory with my language there a little bit. But if you're worried about what your floor of, Kansas hires a MAC coach, Lance Leipold. That's 6 of them, but he hasn't been around as long. My point is, those 5 had gotten to a second contract. They'd been around at least 5 years, which is successful in this day and age. And Lance Leipold doesn't even factor into that group. You get the best coach out of the MAC, you're going to get somebody who's overseen a program. It used to be back in the 60s and 70s, MAC, specifically Miami of Ohio, was the cradle of coaches. Schembechler, Woody Hayes, Paul Brown, there's a bunch of them. Dan Devine, John Pont, there's a bunch of them, right? That was the thing. The Miami of Ohio was the cradle of coaches. Why? Back then, you would make more money if you went to Miami of Ohio than you would be being an assistant coach at the Power 5. These days, Power 5 assistants make more money than Group of 5 head coaches. But it's still a great proving ground. It's still a great place for a coach to not just be an assistant, but to run a program. And the great thing about the MAC is a lot of those programs have equal resources. There's some that have better stadiums and better locker rooms and stuff. But for the most part, those universities are similar and they're recruiting from the same talent base. Okay, of the people in the MAC, who's doing the best job recruiting, evaluating, player developing, and winning games? You know, the one guy that was offensive coordinator, what's his name, Sean Lewis for Colorado, everybody was high on him in early September. Nothing against him, but when he was at Kent State, he was at 500. He had his head on 500, 500, 500. He never had that 9-win season. He goes to Colorado, they win a couple of games, they're throwing around, and all of a sudden he's a hot candidate. I would have been more impressed if he'd have done the reverse, been a coordinator somewhere, then go to the MAC, then go 10 wins, which he didn't do. So why is he a better candidate than somebody that's in the MAC doing better than he did in the MAC? MAC's a great proving ground. Equal resources, who's rising up? Who's winning 10 games? Jason Candle is. If it comes to that theater, if it comes to this point where you've got, you know, Jonathan Smith, Elko, and if they're interested, I know Jonathan Smith will be. Elko, I think, will be. There's indications of that from good sources. Matt Campbell would very much be interested. I'm not sure where Michigan State stands on that. I've heard some things where Michigan State's a little bit standoffish on that. So if it comes to interviews, like old-fashioned interviews, and you're interviewing those guys, yeah, you take a day and you go talk to Jason Campbell and make sure that you're not just blown away with this guy's impressive. I don't know. I've never talked to him. I've watched a couple of his press conferences, and you get a little bit of a sense of who they are at press conferences, but not everything. I watched him against UMass closely a couple weeks ago, and the way he ran the sideline, Toledo was off to a little bit of a sleepy start, and he went Nick Saban on those guys once or twice. And I was like, oh. Anyway, he's going to get a shot somewhere, and he's going to do well somewhere. Not sure if it's Michigan State. So that's a long answer from that question from Trenton Sabo from Charlotte, North Carolina. Thank you for the question. Let's go back here to I'll go ahead. I'll put the number up here if anyone wants. I know our afternoon crowd, you guys are at work and so forth, and you might not want to call in, but if you want to call the show, I'm going to put it in here. If you want to. Question number... All right, so the question from Desert Sparty was, what's your prediction as to who will start for Michigan State against Nebraska? I have a feeling, I've not heard this from any sources or anything, I have a feeling it's going to be Leavitt. I think he's looked better the last 2 weeks. I think he's got live feet. I think he moves better in the pocket, more zip. I think his reads are pretty good. He threw the one interception late in the game against Minnesota. He also led the one scoring drive. Michigan State hadn't scored a touchdown in forever. Nothing against Hauser. He's a young redshirt freshman quarterback who still needs to develop, still needs to learn. A little bit limited with the arm. We've seen that. Leavitt, not limited with the arm. The interception, it's 1st and 10 to the 20-yard line. Down 15 points, I think it was at that point. So a minute and 50 left. So you're going to take chances in that situation. The interception he threw on 1st and 10, I don't think he throws that interception if it's a tie game at that point, and he can, or down 1 when you're playing for a field goal, or down 7 and you need a touchdown. I think you throw it away and you come back on 2nd down. One of the things that Hauser, I thought, was not as good at last week was some of the plays when nothing was there and he just threw it away rather than tucking and running and trying to get something. There was a 3rd and 10. I can't remember if it was the middle screen to the tight end that wasn't there and he just threw it into the ground when he had a running back over here wide open. I don't blame him on that. I blame coaching scheme on that because that was like an all or nothing right here. He's feeling a little bit of pressure right here, but okay, the screen is covered. It's not there. Can we abort mission, use our feet, and go backyard a little bit and see if something else is out there, which a lot of quarterbacks do. And the running back's over there, and he must just be a decoy in this because he was wide open and he never even looked. So I'm not even blaming him on that one. I'm blaming the scheme. Like, I know it's easy for me in the press box, eating donuts and getting fat and I've never played quarterback like this, it's easy for me to say, why don't you have that layer over there? And I'm not blaming Hauser on that. Why hasn't he been coached to know that it looked like that was just a flat decoy, and the running back over there, Nate Carter, looked like he knew that he's not part of it. He's not in the. He's not a potential receiver on that. Let me see if I can find the specifics on that, because now I'm thinking. Or 2nd and 19. It was 2nd and 19. It was after a holding call. And then on 2nd and 20, that's when they kind of did that delay draw. That first coach I ever saw do it was Dave Baldwin, DeAndre Cobb, 70-yard touchdown against Michigan in 2004. He did it at more of an angled delayed draw. They tried it, but he kind of botched the handoff, and Hauser ended up having to keep it for like 1 yard. So now it's 2nd and 19, and they run that middle screen to Parachek. It's covered, and just threw it in the ground. So you're preferring 3rd and 19 rather than scramble to run for a couple of yards, but you don't even look over there, and the running back doesn't look like he's involved because of the structure of the play, which I question on that one. So we're going to 3rd and 19, you end up putting. And that was his last play. Then Levitt came in after that. All right, so Levitt gets down there. He throws the interception on the one. It's 1st and 10 at 20-yard line, down 15 points. Got to make something happen. Took a chance on that learning moment. It's cover 2 over here, and they hadn't played much cover 2. So the corner lets the receiver get behind him, and then he sinks with him. Tight, and the safety over the top to the short side. Very similar to the interception Connor Cook threw at the end of the first half against Alabama in the playoff game. Remember when he down inside the 10-yard line and threw an interception because the corner was cover 2 squatting. First time Alabama had done that all day. Made a mistake. Same mistake, but from the 20-yard line rather than inside the 10. So, learning moment, over-aggressive, learning what the cover 2 hole is about at the college level, those things correctable. But I think a lot of the things Levitt did was really good. Earlier in that drive, Levitt, his best throw of the game, that 22-yard dig to Jalen Franklin, very good throw. Best throw by anyone for Michigan State that day. And zip, accurate, and Jalen Franklin, I give Jalen Franklin credit for coming to Michigan State. Left Wisconsin, transfer portal. I don't think he's a scholarship guy. I think he's a scholarship plus guy, meaning he doesn't count as part of 85. I think he got an in-state deal, NIL. Michigan State needed some blocking. Not bad to go after him because he can block. And Michigan State, for whatever reason, 4 years in, still didn't have any tight ends that could block. Got to think about player development, recruit, and evaluation there. Have to, right? You go into the portal and you get 3 tight ends from the portal. Jalen Franklin, the guy from Norfolk State, who I told you was not ready to play here, and you haven't seen him. I told you that. And, the guy from Boise State, Tyneil Hopper, who was only 6'2", but did some good things and was trying real hard, and was at the Washington game when he went down with the season-ending injury. He was trying real hard to get to the goal line. Much effort. Respect to him. Let's see what we got here.
Call from
Prez.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, we're going to go out to my good longtime friend. I think he might be in, let's see, he's been in Denver, he's been in Texas, he's been in California. He might be in Mexico right now. The great Brez Prez, welcome to SpartanMag Live, my friend. Where on the planet Earth are you right now, if you don't mind me asking?
I do not mind you asking whatsoever. And it's good to talk to you, first of all, Campus Magnus. You are great. I am in Denver. I'm on the south side of Denver, on South Broadway in Mississippi. And I'm staring at the snow-capped Rocky Mountains. And happy to be here.
Awesome. You doing well, my friend? You doing well?
I'm doing good. I mean, I can't complain. I got a new way of looking at things in life that I didn't used to have when I was younger. Let's put it that way.
Nice. I like it. That sounds like positive growth. I'm happy to hear that.
Yes.
And that's good. And I know that you've been posting on the message board here. I know you've come in and gone away and come in and gone away. And really glad to have you back at the Underground Bunker message board with your interesting and very witty contributions. A lot of them seem to incorporate Looney Tunes cartoons somehow, which I respect, which is great. It's not, and they're on time and they're timely and they work and it's good. But more importantly, I'm glad to hear you're doing well there in Denver. You want to talk about sports a little bit? Michigan State, what's on your mind?
I had a couple things on my mind. The first question, do you think that Mel Tucker checked out because he knew his time was limited and the hammer was going to come down soon? And the other question I have is, Jim McElwain of Central Michigan referred to Connor Stallion as that sign stealing guy, yet they were both on Michigan staff in 2018. Does that raise a flag for you, Jim Comparoni?
All right, what was your first one? What was the Mel Tucker?
The one about Mel Tucker. Do you think he checked out as far as recruits and showing up and being engaged because he knew he was in trouble?
Good question. You know, obviously he became aware of the complaint that was levied against him by Brendan Tracy in late December. I think he was troubled by it for sure. I think he might have, I don't know if panic is the right word because he's an even keel guy. He always tried to be even keel. Did that have something to do with him being less aggressive on the recruiting trail and sub-relentless? I mean, the relentless list that they had in 2020 during COVID, he had those guys on the phone that were recruiting hard, doing what they could to sign that Zoom class, as he called the Zoom babies, because nobody could go out and evaluate at that time. Those guys were working hard. They impressed a lot of the recruits with how busy they were, and a lot of assistant coaches remained busy, but Mel Tucker did not. He went after some people here and there, but tried to finish, but I did not see the relentlessness. Was that due to that? I don't know what caused it. I can give examples. I'll say it. We were at Sound Mind, Sound Body Camp at Wayne State in July, and it was hot on that plastic field. It was probably 110 degrees. Mel Tucker spoke that day. I talked to him a little bit. He spoke. Brett Bielema spoke. PJ Fleck spoke. Jim Harbaugh spoke. And after they speak, you go out to the camp, and there's head coaches and assistant coaches. Not a lot of head coaches, but there were some, like the ones I just mentioned, and a few others. But assistant coaches from a lot of programs. Mel Tucker spoke, and he left. He didn't go out on the field to look at recruits. And there were recruits of all ages, to even scout guys, or to have eye contact with recruits. And at that place, you can bump them a little bit. You can't engage a whole lot. Sometimes recruits will come up to you and say, "Coach, I'd like for you to recruit me," and those things I think is legal. He wasn't out there, to the point where I was asking, some of the people I was with, like Jason Killip, who was there with us. I'm like, I wonder if he had a meeting with Ishbia to talk about name, image, and likeness. I can't think of many things that would have been more important, and that was just speculating. I could not think of many things that would be more important on that day than you're already in Detroit. There's already recruits on the field. Why don't you go on the field? And I juxtapose that to previously in the year 2021 when I saw him go on the field in Big Rapids when the Sound Mind, Sound Body Camp was there. He went onto the field and he created a stir. People came up to him. He had this bravado about him. He had this stature about him. And some of the things he was saying was very confident and bold. And recruits responded to him. Assistant coaches. I saw a University of Michigan assistant football coach come up to Mel Tucker that day, give him a handshake, hug, and say, "I love you." This is a Michigan Wolverine assistant coach saying this to Mel Tucker. This is in the summer of 2021. He had a presence. He had an energy about him. And that was part of the reason that I went back to the message board that day and I said, Mel Tucker is a buy. I don't know, as a stock, as a coach, he's a buy. Michigan State fans on the Underground Bunker will remember when I did that. It was part of observing him in the recruiting habitat. And that was day one that he was able to get on the feet on the ground as a recruiter. That was when the COVID thing was lifted and the NCAA said, okay, I think it was June 1st. June 1st, you can leave campus and go evaluate. That was day one, Mel Tucker, boots on the ground, recruiting. And I observed it, and I'm like, wow. And that's when I came back and said, he's a buy. 2021 season happened. They go 11-2, and he was still a buy. And then some things, some of the air came out of the tires gradually, methodically. Not sure why, but was no longer as relentless. He still did well, still finished a recruiting class in 2022. That was a top 25 class, pretty good. And a lot of those freshmen are looking really good right now, but there's only 15 of them because so many scholarship slots had been eaten up by transfer portal discards. So you're at a point where you're coming off a very good 2021 season. You're in the summer. You've got recruiting power. You've got a lot of 4-stars that are visiting campus more than ever before in the history of the program. They only got a small percentage of those because the 2022 season did not do well. And at the end of the recruiting cycle, all the players they thought they had a good shot at went elsewhere. And in the 11th hour, they had to scramble and get what I think were some pretty good players, like Sean Brown out of Arizona, Isaiah Johnson, a wide receiver, Jalen Smith, a wide receiver. I think those are good, like low-level 3-star guys where you had to go and evaluate and look at film and bring somebody in like Michigan State has had to do for decades. That's how it gets done at Michigan State. And they had to revert back to that to fill out the class at the 11th hour. They shot high, lost a lot, brought in some good ones, and the 15 freshmen are good. If I'm Michigan State, I'm like, why don't we have 23 freshmen in that class? It's because they had a lot of transfers. And I made this point when I wrote my article after the Minnesota game to start the second half at Minnesota. If you include Simeon Brown getting back on the field and Spencer Brown getting back on the field. I'm sorry, Simeon Barrow and Spencer Brown get back on the field. Spencer Brown struggled late in the game, gave up a strip sack fumble. But of the 22 players that started the second half for Michigan State at Minnesota, of the 22, 11 were Mark D'Antonio recruits. 11 D'Antonio recruits still starting for Michigan State in the second half. Now that includes Evan Morris, who was a kickoff, not a scholarship guy, but he's your tight end, starting tight end at this point. And I'm not saying those players are great, but D'Antonio was a long time ago. It's just a small percentage of the roster, and they're still the starters. In other words, the people behind them aren't quite bumping them out. 11 D'Antonio starters. And people said that D'Antonio left the cupboard bare. And it was not great, and D'Antonio did not recruit as well at the end as he did earlier, but there's still 11 that are still out there, right? Now think about how many transfer portal players Tucker brought in. Dozens. So in some ways, it's the transfer portal. In other ways, it's the discard pile. Think about the players he brought in for the discard pile. Dozens. How many of transfers started the second half against Minnesota? I think it's 2. The running back, 2. The running back, Nathan Carter, who's been good this year, and Aaron Brule, the linebacker, who's come on this year, who took him a while last year, and he's playing hard and playing fast. I don't think Bogle started the second half. He may have, but he didn't play starter snaps. He did what he could, whatever. Of all the transfers they brought in, they had 2 starting second half against Minnesota. And of all that you've heard about Nebraska, that D'Antonio left the cupboard bare, 11 D'Antonio recruits against 2 starters. What's wrong with this picture? Too many transfers and not getting enough out of them. Instead of the commitment they made to all those transfers, I think if X number of those had been high school recruits, you'd have better foundational layers at the bottom youth of the program because those freshmen are good. Brendan Parachek looks very good. Chance Rucker looks very good. Jordan Hall looks very good. They hit on these guys. Those you had with Rucker and Hall. And there's one other one. Oh, Jalen Thompson from Detroit Cast Tech looks very good. You're playing 3 true freshmen on defense right now. I understand that. That's great. They did a good job with those guys. I'm saying instead of 15, if I'm Michigan State, I wish that they had 22 of those guys. You know what I'm saying? So, and it's easy for me to say this in retrospect, and I didn't criticize it at the time. I took note of it at the time. Like, well, that's different. Let's wait and see. And every time Michigan State brought in a transfer that was a 4-star recruit, you didn't see me or our guys at SpartanMag.com waving flags like, oh my God, they just got a 4-star recruit from Minnesota named Tank Brown. This guy's going to change the world. We never did that. Not for him, not for Bogle, not for Chester Kimbrough, not for Harold Joyner, not for Corvera's Crouch. We said these guys are interesting. They fit the shirt, like Greg Brady. They fit the shirt. They look good. They're the right size that Tucker wanted. And the 4 stars, which is what, Saeed Khalif really liked and some of these others, they had that. But anytime you're a 4-star and you leave Florida, Alabama, Texas A&M, like you may say Adelaide, and you're not a starter and you're in the portal, guess what? You're no longer a 4-star. You're a 3-star. If you were at those schools, you didn't start, you're in the portal, you're not a 4-star anymore. You're a project. You have to prove yourself. You might be pretty good. Bogle's been pretty good. Brule, it took him a while. And even Brule says that motivationally, he was not in a great spot last year because he wasn't starting, and he wasn't thrilled about that. But he's coming along, and Brule's doing a good job playing fast, doing some good things at linebacker. Jacoby Windman was great. He's coming from UNLV. That's the type of guy I'm talking about. If you get a guy to the portal who's moving up, who's been all conference somewhere, that's good. Now, if you're a heavyweight, heavyweight program like Michigan right now, when they go to the portal, they're taking starters on the offensive line from Virginia, from Stanford. That is strong. That's good. They're taking defensive ends that are good. That, to me, that's where you're working at an optimal level in the portal. You're not getting foundational guys. You're getting guys that have already started somewhere that are helping you. Nathan Carter was that way. He was a starter at UConn. He comes to Michigan State. That's an upgrade. That was good. It's easy for me to sit here and look in retrospect, hindsight being 2020, and seeing what the errors were. But some of those were areas, especially in the camp atmosphere. That's not the way Michigan State's done it in the past. And when Harlan Barnett became interim coach on his radio show, he said, in all due respect, he's more of a regional recruit philosophy guy rather than positional recruit. And when Tucker was doing that, I'm like, gosh, did he do that? Did he bring that in from Alabama? I called some people at Alabama that cover the team. They're like, no, Alabama still does regional recruiting. So does Georgia. So that was an idea that Tucker brought in, and I've talked about it before. I'm critical of it now because I don't think it was advantageous for Michigan State. But at the time, I remained like, well, that's interesting. And I thought it was a noble approach how they shot for 4- and 5-star recruits. Fell short here and there. They gave it a shot. But as it turns out, the roster right now is not bad. They are not losing these games because of talent. Quarterback position, it's tryout camp there, and that's why they're losing. That's not been great at that position. Everybody can see that. And your general unraveling of the program because of everything that happened at the top and the distractions. You get substitute teacher syndrome going on, and you're playing teams like Minnesota that are still buckled in. Teams like Nebraska still buckled in. Rutgers very much still buckled in, and they're dominating Michigan State in the fourth quarter. Michigan State is good for about 35 minutes every Saturday. I've got great respect for the players that are out there doing what they can. Those players are, like I said, as my disclaimer, they are better at football than I'll ever be at anything. I've got great respect for the young men going out there, putting on the helmets and playing college football at this level in front of 2 million people on television and 80,000 at the stadium. I don't disparage them at all. But it's so important. It's so difficult in this sport at this time of year in November when everybody's beaten up and bruised a little bit and it gets cold. The teams that have the players that still are taking their marching orders from the head coach and carrying things out with that kind of will, they have the advantage. Michigan State, as much as they respect Harlan Barnett, it's just not the same type of marching orders. That's why you're seeing little bobbles of discipline here and there. And it's just good enough to play good football for 35 or 40 minutes, but ultimately get beat. So that's a long answer. I apologize, but you're asking me if he checked out. I just kind of went over the whole situation that could have been better. Did he check out? He changed. Something happened there. Some air was coming out of the tires. Was it that? Was it something else? I'm not sure, but some air did come out of the tires for some reason. Was that too long of an answer?
No, that was a great answer. All encompassing.
Now, Alex James just posted.
Moving on to the McElwain thing.
Well, hold on. Alex James just had an interesting point. He says, and terrible play calls. You're right, Alex James. In addition to all of that, I've got great respect for Harlan Barnett. He's been a really good defensive coordinator and defensive backs coach over the years. Now he's thrust into being a head coach. And you can see when Michigan State's on offense, he's basically a spectator, right? Because he outsources that to the offense because that's the program he inherited. It's hard for him to come in there and oversee things. He makes some decisions here and there have been some decisions that have not been good. Going forward on fourth down and deep in your own territory against Iowa in a field position game, a low-scoring game, the risk-reward there is not advantageous. What you do is you punt it back to them, and they will give the ball back to you. You don't give them the ball at your own 30-yard line with the quarterback sneak. And especially the way they reduced in there, and the way they saw on film that Michigan State's going to want to go quarterback sneak on fourth down, they took that away. That was not good. Going for it on fourth down early in the Michigan game, you're not going to beat Michigan anyway, so I understand trying to steal a possession. Michigan goes down, scores. Michigan State gets a couple of first downs, gets to midfield, 4th and 3. They go for it, short field touchdown. That, when you go for it on your opening possession, that seemed a little panicky to me. The ones that I didn't like was against Rutgers. Michigan State, Rutgers has their comeback going, and Michigan State's, there's 14 minutes to go, and I think Michigan State is still up, 8 or 14 points, 8, 15 points, something like that. And Michigan State is defending against an onside kick with 14 minutes to go. Defending against an onside kick with 14 minutes to go. They've got a single receiver deep, kick returner deep, Terrell Henry. He's like at the 19-yard line. The other 10 are up defending against an onside kick with 14 freaking minutes to go. Who do they think is going to do an onside kick with 14 minutes to go? I understand being aware of it a little bit, but to be all in on defending against the onside kick, okay, so they kick it deep over Henry's head. It's a touchback. And the Rutgers people are like, are they that freaking stupid? If we score a touchdown again and they do that again, we're going to do a pooch along the sideline. He's not going to get to it. It's going to be difficult for them to do it. Okay, Rutgers goes. They score again. Now there's 8 minutes left. Michigan State's up there defending against the onside kick again. Now Rutgers is like, yes, they are that stupid. Let's pooch it up there, and you saw what happened. Henry didn't run for a fair catch. If you're going to do that, you tell your guy Terrell Henry, you call for a fair catch. They can't hit you. Just go and catch it like a punt. Get that ball. I assume maybe they told him that. Henry told the coaches afterwards that he didn't feel he could quite get there, whatever. But Michigan State not only did it wrong, they showed their hand at 14 minutes, gave Rutgers a chance to capitalize on it with a pooch punt. Yes, Michigan State is that stupid. Pooch punt, didn't field it, fumble, recover, touchdown. That was stupid. So Alex James, terrible play calls. I would say that was one of them, right? And that was more stupid than Michigan State attempting the onside kick last week. Both of those. Michigan State had just driven down, score. Nice drive by Sam Levitt. Touchdown on the slant. You're down, 7 points with 8 minutes to go. You've got momentum. They had just started to take control with the run game. Give them a deep field. Play some defense, right? And I usually see the logic in most decisions to the point where I'm like, well, it had logic to it. It just didn't work. And I will say this. That onside kick was struck well. They got a good bounce, and the guy from Minnesota made a difficult play and finished it. And there was some contact, and he held onto the ball. So even though I disagree with that move, Michigan State did arrive at the junction point. Michigan State executed it well. And if they'd have gotten it, like Barnett said, everybody would have said it was a great move, and I would have said, yes, it was a great move. But the onside kick strategy at Rutgers was worse than this, but they were both not. Neither one was good on that. So play calls, in terms of play design on some things, we've talked about that a minute ago on some other things. Play calls, I'm not big on play calls being wrong because everybody runs on offense a lot of the same plays. But there were some things here and there that have not helped Michigan State have a chance. That have not enhanced Michigan State's chances of winning. All right, you also asked about McElwain. Refresh my memory. What was that? What did McElwain say about Connor Stallions?
You have to excuse me. I put you on mute because I'm munching on some pumpkin pie. It's that time of year, Con.
Even in Denver, of course. You don't have. Yeah. You don't have. Do you have apple cider in Denver?
I have apple cider in my fridge.
Okay. All right. Good for you. Good for you. Carry on. So, Stallions, what did McElwain say? But now, first we need to refresh everybody on this. Connor Stallions is the guy that stole the signs at Michigan with that whole operation. And it's been revealed this week that apparently, he was on the sideline for the Michigan State Central Michigan game at Spartan Stadium wearing Central Michigan gear. Looks like he might have had glasses on that were recording stuff. He's wearing sunglasses at night. And the last I checked, he's not Corey Hart. He's not Corey Hart. He's Connor Stallions. He's wearing sunglasses at night. He's got the video thing on. That's what it looks like to me. Allegedly, I don't know for sure. That's what it looks like. So Jim McElwain, after Central Michigan's game last night, was asked about it, I think. I did not hear the press conference. Did you hear it? What did he say? Is that what you're bringing up?
I didn't. I'm just reading his quotes, and he referred to Connor Stallions as that sign stealing guy, quote unquote, that sign stealing guy, which is curious to me because they were on Michigan staff.
Yeah.
At the same time, even if Stallions was a volunteer, they had to have known each other back in 2018. So, I mean, that raises a flag for me on McElwain, and I'm just wondering what your take would be on something like that.
Yeah. McElwain is a loose dude. I know him well. I consider him a friend. I like him. I see him on the recruiting trail. It's always good to see him. He was with the Harbaugh staff for 1 year in 2018 before taking the job at Central Michigan. Most coaches are control freaks. They know who is on the sideline. McElwain does not strike me as, if there's any coach in the country who is not a control freak, it would probably be Matt McElwain. He's a loose guy. He's the type of guy that if there's a GA on the staff that wants to bring a guy in from Michigan, he would, he might be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And he might not know about the whole operation. Okay. So did he know that he was a Michigan State staffer? Probably. Maybe not. It might have been a GA on his staff that says, hey, I got a guy who's coming in, whatever. Can he be on the staff? Can he be on the sideline? That's not possible with most coaches that are control freaks. I'm telling you, with Jim McElwain, the way I know him and the way I respect him, quite frankly, he's a loose guy, and there's a chance he's kind of a laissez-faire guy. There's a chance he didn't know that Stallions was a Michigan staffer, believe it or not. And he may not have known he was up to what he was doing and what he was doing. Yeah, they were there at the same time, but maybe he's in the building and he knows him. Does he know him that well? Back then, Stallions was just getting entrenched at Michigan to a small degree in 18. He knew him from back then. He knew he's a Michigan guy. Yeah, I guess I've talked myself into it. He probably knew he was a Michigan guy that was on the sideline. But did he know he was up to all those things? I'm going to say I doubt it. If there's a coach who is not a control freak and something like that could slip through the cracks to an extent, honestly, I think it would be McElwain. Full disclosure, I'm friends with McElwain, so I'm not good friends, but I see him and it's friendly. I got along with him pretty good when he was here as a coach. I like him. So you can say that I've got a bias in this, and I do. I like him as a person. So you take that with a grain of salt. That's my full disclosure on the whole thing. I think that he is a loose guy, laissez-faire guy, and if there's a guy that's not a control freak that could let something like that slip through the cracks without knowing that operation was going on, it's probably McElwain. He might not have known the extent of all that was going on. Should he have known that it's illegal for a staffer at another school to be on the sideline? Should he have known that? Yes. Does he know that? Probably. Did he know that guy is a staff member at Michigan, like getting paid as a staffer? He may not have known that. So that's my take on that. That's what I got. Good question. Anything else?
Good stuff.
Hey, Ramiro, it's great to hear from you. And anything else before we sign off?
Just if he's as loose as you say he is,
yeah,
then that leads me to believe that he would cooperate with the investigation.
Yeah, is he saying that he's not going to cooperate?
No, not at all. I think the quote is, we're trying to get to the bottom of it and find out how it happened, what happened.
Yeah.
But,
definitely it's an embarrassing thing for him because he is running the sideline and that guy was on the sideline. So for him, it's either A, he had enabled it and allowed it, or B, he said, yeah, come on in, get on the sideline, and was not aware. And that's kind of a loose operation thing. Either way is not a great look. All right.
Well, I will free up the line for hopefully Nils or Big Movie to call, or maybe even a special treat, Matt Dorsey, as I affectionately refer to as Dorsicles the Wise. Miss that guy.
Dorsicles the Wise. He's still watching, and he'll be a part of the situation as we move forward for sure.
All right, good stuff, Cop. It's good to talk to you, man. I miss you. Miss the campus, and hopefully I'll be back soon.
Yeah, let me know when you're back. It's always great to see you. You be good. All right, Ramiro?
Likewise. Thank you. Bye-bye, Tom.
You take care. There goes Ramiro. Ramiro was good friend. Glad to hear he's doing well in Denver. Let's go back over here to the comments area. We're going to be wrapping up pretty soon here. because we got some Urban Meyer questions I got to get to. All right. YT Sparty says, I cannot wait to see Cooper and Booker on the floor at the same time. That was something I was going to ask Paul about, but I had to let him go. You know, Booker, that's the one negative about the basketball scrimmage and the competitive juices of being on TV with a crowd, is that you're playing to win the game rather than playing to develop players. That's one of the areas you lose. Booker only played 3 minutes, hit a three-pointer, didn't play as much, because if he'd have played more, Tennessee would have won by more at this stage. But you might get better later in the year if you invest minutes in him. And if it's a closed scrimmage with nobody there, Booker gets 10 minutes plus, and he makes mistakes, and he showed on film, and it gives him a chance to make progress. So there's good and bad in having an exhibition game on TV with fans there. Like Izzo says, competitive juices gets flowing, and you start to coach the game to win the game rather than what you would do to develop your team in a closed scrimmage. D. Bruce, checking in from Vestaburg, Michigan. I've been to Vestaburg, Michigan, way, way, way back in another lifetime when I was a sports writer at the Greenville Daily News in the early 90s, fresh out of college. Had a great time there. Loved it in Greenville. Had good friends there on the staff. Learned a lot. Had fun. Covered high schools like every week was the Super Bowl. And Vestaburg was in our coverage area. It was a Class D program. Went up there and covered a basketball game once or twice. A very good friend of mine, I won't say his first name, but a guy by the name of Mr. Manley. Very good friend of mine from Vestaburg, and I haven't talked to him in a long time. I hope he's doing well. Love that guy. YT Sparty says he loves Take 5. Rosalind Russell says Take 5 bars are incredible. Just discovered them this year. So Rosalind chiming in and agreeing. Paul is right. Take 5 surpassed all my other candy bars. Try it. Take 5. I wish I could eat it. But if they ever come out with a gluten-free Take 5, we're all going to go streaking through the Diag. You guys don't want to see that. Noah Sprunger. Twix. Come on. No, Twix is not bad. I'm old enough to remember the big Twix launch when it was a new candy bar. And it is good. Good with the caramel. I'm pro caramel. Rob South says 100 Grand is the best. That's also a candy bar that's strong with the caramel. It's got those Rice Krispie things. That's a good concept too. Payday's up there for sure. Mounds is dark chocolate also. I do like dark chocolate. Maybe that's why I like Mounds a lot. Payday is up there. I like Payday. Payday's like off. It's like we're not even going to try that chocolate thing. We're Payday. Screw you guys. We're going peanuts, caramel, salted caramel before anyone knew salted caramel was cool. And Payday's like, screw you guys. Peanuts, salted caramel. Go do your own thing. We got Payday. Then they put chocolate over it, and then it was a whole different shooting match. All right, Noah Sprunger. Almonds should not be in candy anyways, Jim. You're not missing out. So Noah's in the anti-almond crowd. I respect that. I wouldn't know. I've had almonds accidentally once or twice. Bit of honey. Remember Bit of honey candy bars? That used to be a drag when you got those at Halloween, right? Secondly, they've low-key almonds. There's almonds in Bit of honey. So I had a Bit of honey once. I'm like, what's going on here? Bad news. YD Sparty says, I don't get the hate for Raisinets. I love chocolate-covered raisins. I agree, YD Sparty. Chocolate-covered raisins, wonderful. YD Sparty says, Urban is going to be so expensive, not worth it. Fleet says Urban's a lock. Fleet says not worth 10 wins every year. J.J. McKay from the Keweenaw Peninsula says, good afternoon, everyone checking in from Keweenaw County. I don't feel tardy. Quoting David Lee Roth with that, which I respect. YT Sparty says 10 wins ain't guaranteed. So what happens if he's 10 million asking for 20 million NIL and the dude goes 6-6? It's a fair question. If all that happens, you do get that initial burst. Theoretically, if you get Urban Meyer, it puts Michigan State in a level like, oh crap, they're serious about the whole enterprise. You know, let's not forget about Michigan State. Maybe they are a top 20 program. Maybe they do have the resources to pile up and pile in and make a run at something big at some point. But then at some point you have to start winning football games. And I think you would. I've heard my friend Tim Stout say, if you look at someone like Urban Meyer, he thinks that it's silly to talk about, but he says, you're not going to get the Urban Meyer that won 12-0 and 13-1 at Ohio State on a regular basis. I understand that, but it would do a lot of positives, breathe a lot of life into the program, make people sit up and, man, Michigan State, it's got some horsepower, Look at swinging a big stick, getting this guy, if it happens theoretically. And he would come in, and I don't think they'd go 6-6. I think they do much better than that. They're not going 13-1, but theoretically, I think he would do well. That's no great stretch. All right. Omnivore says, makes an interesting comment at talking about my percentages. Just keeping track at home. I appreciate that. Once again, give us a like here. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to SpartanMag.com. YT Sparty says Urban's last 2 stops were Florida and Ohio State. That's not Michigan State. And you're right, YT Sparty. I would compare it, if Urban Meyer theoretically went to Michigan State, it would be very similar to when Steve Spurrier went to South Carolina. The same age. Past national champions. Difference is Meyer has done it at 2 different schools. Another difference is that Steve Spurrier was a system guy. To him, defense was something you outsource and you don't pay any attention to. He was big fun and gun, and what he did with the fun and gun was ahead of his time in terms of what they did with the pass game. By the time Spurrier came back, it was no longer as much ahead of its time. People do catch up, like they caught up to Joe Tiller at Purdue while he was at Purdue. Chip Kelly leaves. When he comes back to college at UCLA, they've caught up to what he was doing at Oregon. And Chip Kelly's kind of changed some things. He's gaining traction and getting going a little bit there. But Spurrier at South Carolina would be similar. South Carolina is a similar program, a middleweight in the SEC. Michigan State's kind of a middleweight in the Big Ten. Kind of a sleeping giant type. Spurrier went to South Carolina in the first 4 or 5 years. He was like 6-6, 6-6, 6-6, 6-6. He gained traction later in his stay. 3 straight top 10 finishes. I think they finished number 4 in the country in 2013. So he got it done. And increasingly, while he was at South Carolina, they became more of a power running attack and less fun and gun. So he kind of figured it out, morphed it around, and ended up with 3 really strong years at South Carolina. The next year, starting to get a little bit old. He saw the writing on the wall that Clemson was coming on strong, and he retired midseason rather than get beat by Clemson again. That's my theory on that. So I think that that would be an historic, comparative, comparable type of situation. Same age, a guy surprising people coming back to the college game at a Power 5 middleweight, sleeping giant, so to speak. I think that Spurrier, having been a system coach, had a more difficult return, hence the 6-6, 6-6, 6-6, than Meyer would have. Meyer is not a system guy. He's a top to bottom, all 85 guys, physicality, defense, run the ball, in addition to being spread, shotgun, all those things. And to use his own words, he's kind of a maniac. Don't know for sure, but if it happened, I think that Meyer would have a better chance to hit the ground running and have more early success than Spurrier did at South Carolina. If it happens, which I'm still saying, some people are saying it's 0%. I'm sticking at 33. And some people that I respect with good sources are saying it's above 50%. I'm not ready to go there, but I don't refute what they're hearing. And those that say 0, I don't refute them either. It makes me pause and say, okay, who are they talking to? And the people that say that 0, I'm thinking, okay, who would be the people at Michigan State that would block it? Board of Trustees members, Alan Haller. The president's not going to. So I'm not talking to all the board members, so unless you're talking to them and you know how they're going to vote. But if you knew how they were going to vote, this would not have gone as far down the road as it has. And it has gone down the road. It started, a few days after Tucker was gone. A key Michigan State figure or 2 wanted to go after Meyer. I heard that. I stayed quiet for 2 weeks. I didn't want to mention it to any of my people because I didn't want to throw it out there and get it back in the echo chamber. I waited, and about 2 weeks later, it came out the other end. I'm like, yes, I heard that. And then you hear it from this end. Something was going on. And then the booster people, Ishbia and so forth, people that have access to them, you've heard it. You've seen the reports. That's out there. That's real. And then the travel thing, I still never verified that. Hey, I texted a guy in the athletic department, someone that usually gets back to me. And I said, hey, did this happen? Did the travel thing happen? Did Meyer visit? Didn't get a response. He usually responds to me, not this time. So I've never verified that. And like I said on Saturday, do I think it happened? Yes, I do think that Meyer came here and visited, but I did not verify it with primary sources, with people that were there, people that saw him. I don't have that. So you're asking me, why am I bringing something up that I can't verify? Well, if I only talked about things I could verify, then I wouldn't. If I spent all my time trying to verify these things, then we would never have a show. I would never have a time where I turned on the camera and we get here and we get to talk about it. But that's right. You ask where I am and what's come across my desk. And if we were at a bar just talking about this stuff, that's what I would say. I don't know it for sure. Didn't verify it. Heard it from several what I would call good sources, secondary sources, but I don't know it to be fact. Do I think it happened? Yes. And there's some other things travel-wise in terms of Michigan State people taking a trip somewhere to possibly talk. A lot of smoke there. And other stuff, and I've talked about the sub-theaters of the Meyer Theater. We talked about this on SpartanMag.com. And there's different precincts of that. And on Monday, some precincts were reporting positively on some things. And I'm still waiting to hear from some other precincts in that sub-theater. Why are those important? Well, people are keeping it quiet in East Lansing for a good reason. Alan Haller's very good at keeping it quiet, and other people, they're going to keep it quiet. So it's going to be hard to get information out of there. The people funding it, the boosters, they keep it somewhat quiet, but you can get information from there. And then out of the state of Michigan, from the other direction, things can leak out of there as well. So there's different sub-theaters, industry theaters, and so forth. So that's what's going on. I'm still at 33%. On Monday, in the industry and those precincts were coming back out of nowhere because those were always Luke cold, as I said on Saturday. That part of it was Luke cold, whereas other things in East Lansing were heating up. And I'm like, no kidding. Kept hearing it. I'm like, what? But these things are still Luke cold on it. And then on Monday, they went lukewarm and warmer. And I was like, holy crap. So that's why I went to 30 and 33 on Monday at SpartanMag.com Underground Bunker Message Board. If you're wondering where all this is going on, it's Underground Bunker Message Board. Become a subscriber, and we chat about it all the time. We'd love to have you subscribe right now as the Coaching Watch continues. All right. Noah Sprunger was talking about Leipold, 2-10, then 6-7, and then 6-2 to start this season with a big win over Oklahoma. Alan McVeigh says Leipold looks younger than 59. Got to say that for him. I would agree. Leipold does look younger. He's a young 59. And there's a lot of good coaches at the Group of Five and in the Power Five that are older. And once they get it going a little bit, it's a sweet spot for them. Could he do it at a new program at this stage? It'd be a challenge. But you're seeing a lot of strong Group of Five programs with older coaches. Ohio U with Albin, he's like 58, 59, taking over for the dude, Frank Solich. James Madison, they're still undefeated, right? Signetti's like 63 years old. Tulane with Willie Fritz, he's like 63 years old. Rich Rod at Jacksonville State in his 60s, and they're like 7-1. That's a sweet spot for a Group of Five schools where you get somebody that's too old for anyone to come and get, but you just keep it rolling. So Leipold doing a good job at Kansas. I heard that his buyout is like $10 million, which would be pretty steep. I don't know that for a fact, but that would be really steep. I don't know if you bite that one. I don't know, because there are some stoppers there because the age is the thing, right? Douglas says most Spartan fans are content with being mediocre and satisfied with mores. What's mores? Oh, I don't know what that means. YD Sparty says MSU is what it is. Fans who think we can be Ohio State or Alabama are smoking crack. Douglas says most Spartan fans are content with mediocrity, uncomfortable with positive national attention. I don't know what polling Douglas has been doing, but were you watching the end of the D'Antonio era when they were mediocre and many Spartan fans were not happy with it to the point where I thought they were crazy? So maybe I'm the one that says that I'm content with mediocrity. Maybe I'm the person to whom you're referring. Wizzy Spartan says Clemson is who they are. Oregon is who they are. A&M is who they are. I can't argue with that. Not sure what it means. YD Sparty says A&M is better than Michigan State. More resources, bigger stadium. Oil money, says JJ McKay. I agree. Wizzy Spartan says if Michigan State gets urban, it's because they are paying higher than anyone else, plus NIL money, etc. No question. Money would be a big factor. And sources say that despite what he said to the Knoxville Quarterback Club 3 weeks ago, sources outside of East Lansing say that he is interested in coaching again. He does not want the Jacksonville thing to be the last item on his ledger. All right, who am I talking to on that? I'll tell you. I've talked to Bernie Fratto a little bit. He's the guy that had the scoop on Urban Meyer's visit. He has sources. I've talked to him about it. I called up Coach Jason Brown, the guy from Last Chance University, the Netflix series, former JUCO coach. Talked to him yesterday because he went out 4 weeks ago and said it's going to be Urban Meyer, and he doubled down on it yesterday. I talked to him a little bit about who he talks to, and it's people with I can't say who it is, but strong indications that yes, Urban Meyer would like to coach again. I'll leave it at that. So that was something I didn't know. I don't have access to Urban Meyer to know whether he's serious about it. We can take what he said at the Knoxville Quarterback Club, and there were some specifics on there that really made me believe, okay, he's not coaching again. And then other people like in the industry are like, no, don't close the door. And then people that have access to Meyer's people that I don't have are like, no, he wants to coach again. I'm like, okay, all right, 33%. YT Sparty says, MSU fans vacate the stadium when the team sucks. We are what we are. And YT Sparty just bringing a lot of grim facts. All right. What do we have here? Let's go back to the message. Let's go back to the mailbag before we run. We got to get out of here. You guys have work to do. Question 4, Lee Goss from Flossmoor, Illinois says, do you think experience is important at the quarterback position? He's saying that tongue-in-cheek because I've been ranting about it on the Underground Bunker message board. Then I ranted about it a few minutes ago, so I answered that question. You don't need me to go back over it again, but I appreciate the post. It's funny. Nick from Arlington, Virginia says, 3:30, 4:30. Okay. I got to go on a talk show in Nebraska. I got to take this guy. So I'm supposed to go in there at 4:30. I got to say yes. I'm glad he reminded me. What do we have here? I got to check these other things. All right. Nick from Arlington, Virginia says, Hauser has not scored a touchdown since the third quarter against Rutgers. Is there any reason to expect improved results with him at the helm against a pesky Nebraska defense? Nebraska's defense is good. I've not watched film yet. I watched condensed version of their game against whoever it was they played last week. Good defense. He says, to me, Sam Leavitt looked much more prepared for Big Ten football than Kim or Hauser have in limited action. Is that an overreaction? Good question, Nick from Arlington. I agree with you. I think Sam Leavitt has more talent than those guys. And a true freshman that's just getting his first snaps, he is starting at a pretty high level. And if he improves from there, that's going to be exciting. I think he's got a lot of talent. I think he's a winner. I think he's a big-time winner at this level. Hauser's good. Pretty good, but you saw, some of his passes flutter a little bit. I'm not sure Hauser has the ability to get on the left hash and throw the 17-yard out to the sideline. When they talk about being able to make all the throws, I'm not sure Hauser can do it. Maybe we're still learning about these as we go. There's one third down pass that he threw that didn't quite get to Jerron Glover. It was low and away and incomplete. And it was not impressive zip on that one. But he's just getting started also. But I agree with you. Question 5, WX from the middle of the mitten. He said, what's the feeling around the program about the sign stealing stuff? Do we care or are we pissed off and talking to the Big Ten about it? Good question. Harlan Barnett was asked about it a little bit. Was it after the Michigan game or at some point? And he said, remember what he said? He said, it doesn't get you till it gets you. Remember, I said that. That's what Harlan Barnett said. So in the program, they know Michigan's doing it. They're not happy with it. They're not preaching it from the mountaintop. But, yeah, they're irritated. And Big Ten coaches across the conference are wondering what's going to happen there. And they're going to want to see some ramifications. Question 6, Tim from Ypsilanti. He says, I know it's not your beat, but what do you think is going to happen with Harbaugh and the sign-stealing scandal? He says it seems to get worse every day, yet nothing has happened. Will there be any accountability? Good question, Tim from Ypsilanti. Yeah, nothing has happened except last week. I think NCAA investigators went to Ann Arbor and interviewed Michigan coaches. I didn't verify that, but there were some reports. Maybe that's been verified. I have no reason to disbelieve that. I think that they were there based on what we heard. So if they were there, to me, that's like the NCAA moving quicker on something than I've ever seen them move. I can't remember a time when something is broken and 3 or 4 or 5 days later, they're on campus investigating it and interviewing people. To me, that sounds to me like NCAA might want to get something done this year, which is what it looks like to me. Usually the NCAA takes a year and a half, 2 years to get something finished. Maybe they've got reason to try to get something done this year because this scandal pertains to this season. Do they want Michigan to be in a national championship game with this hanging over the sport's head? I realize the NCAA does not choose who makes the playoff. The NCAA College Football Playoff Committee does. But I just thought it was interesting that the NCAA was acting that quickly. That would lead me to believe that they are possibly open to coming down with an initial judgment early. And something like this, when they are usually investigating something like the grade scandal at North Carolina or any number of recruiting violations, they got to take forever, get their people together, go on campus and try to talk to people that don't have to talk to them. They don't have subpoena power. They can't force someone to talk. They can't force someone to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth. So it gets in a gray area, and he said, she said, and they go for 3 or 4 years. And by the time they come out with something, the coach is already gone. Now, Kansas got away with stuff with FBI involved. That seemed to have been cut and dried, but it didn't work out against Kansas somehow, some way, to the point where Kansas State coach Bruce Weber grew his hair long as a strike against it, as defiance against it, as protest against it. Meanwhile, the NCAA continues to lose more and more clout. I'm just wondering, does the NCAA want to prove that it still has teeth? Is this an opportunity to prove that they still have teeth? I thought that might have been part of it with their ruling against, was it Tez Walker? Was that the player at North Carolina that did something prior to the NIL thing and was, maybe I'm mixing small scandals here, but there was a player at LSU, I think it was LSU, someone in the Southeast, that accepted money for an appearance or autographs, and he was deemed ineligible like the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season for something that is legal now, but it was illegal then. And a lot of people thought that that was outrageous. To me, that was the NCAA trying to prove that they still have teeth, that they still have some sort of power. Just I don't know that for sure. That's the way it looked to me. This is an opportunity for the NCAA to show that they still have power. They released all power when it comes to, transfer portal, when it comes to name, image, and likeness. So what does NCAA do? There's no longer recruiting violations, so to speak. So what rules are there? The rules that are still out there and people that are breaking rules, it's a chance for them to prove that they still exist and they still mean something. So if I'm Michigan in terms of timing, I'm a little nervous about that. Also, when Harbaugh was suspended for 3 days because of what Michigan called the cheeseburger incident, when in actuality it was illegal contact with recruits during COVID. Not only did some people think that's a big deal. I mean, Arizona State lost their coach, Herm Edwards, because of that. Michigan does it, but if you listen to reports, it sounds like the NCAA was not impressed and a little bit bothered and annoyed by Harbaugh's response to that. What did Harbaugh do? What was his response? He does what he always does. He played dumb. He plays dumb. And that works with everything else he's ever done in life, but the NCAA might not be amused by that. And what will he do with this situation, with the Stallions thing? He's going to play dumb. Might not work with the NCAA. All right. Question 7, Matt, posting from East Lansing. Jim, any insight on the basketball team, and will they be improved when it comes to rebounding, particularly with Hall and Sissoko? I think it's one of the most important keys to winning the whole thing. They out-rebounded Tennessee 38-31. That was a good sign. Will they be better on a game-in, game-out basis? Good question. I don't know any more than you do. It was good that Hall got into double figures and boards in this game. Sissoko kind of comes and goes when it comes to rebounding. The guard rebounding, if Cohen Carr is playing a wing, should give them good rebounding minutes from that position when he plays that position. On Sunday, he played, I think, pretty much half his minutes at the 4, half his minutes at the 3. When he's at the 3, he's a plus rebounder. When he's at the 4, he's a plus rebounder. But when he's at the 3, he should and could very much be a very, very much plus rebounder. It's not there yet. They are wiring him to have a rebounding mentality, and he's getting there. That'll help with the 15 minutes per game that he plays. Carson Cooper's improving in that area. Sissoko's improving. I don't know if it's going to be one of like the all-time great rebounding Michigan State teams. but it's not going to be bad. But I hear your point. That's one of the keys to winning it all. We will be watching that as the season goes along. Ernie in Colorado says, "Hi Jim. I know it'll ultimately depend on each player's unique situation, but I'm curious if what coaches stand out to you as being able to keep the young pieces of the roster intact moving forward." A little bit of a sentence fragment there, but I get what your question is. Which coaches? And we've got some janitorial people coming through here, so I'm sorry if some of that is here in the office, so to speak. Anyway, actually, we might just close it down. Which coaches? Which coaches stand out to being able to keep the young pieces on this roster intact moving forward? You're talking about head coach candidates. Hey, these players are waiting to see who's going to be the head coach. Of course, it's hard to say which ones will be able to come in and really and keep those people. It's good. I don't really have inside information on that. I'll think about that a little bit more, but it would just be a guess at this point. But that is a factor. That's not a reason why you would hire a coach. That'll be something that would have an impact on how quickly they can gain traction. Big Ten is going to be easier. All right, question 9. Schmitty from Michigan, he says, "Hi, Jim. If Urban's percentage is higher, which other segment dropped to accommodate, i.e. the Field or Smith, Elko Smith?" I would say it's that Elko Smith thing, and it's not that those are less of a likelihood. It's just whether or not Michigan State has to go to that theater, but that's still the most likely theater in my opinion. He says, "Have you heard anything on Big Ten discussions about, although, I mean, if something happens, that thing can change quickly. That 33 can jump quickly. And I'm not ruling out that possibility. I'm not saying it's 33 and cruising. I mean, that thing, I appreciate the possibility that thing could jump up to numbers that some people have out there. I don't discount that possibility at all. Have you heard anything on Big Ten discussions and athletic directors regarding potential in-season punishment for Michigan? No, I've not heard anything on that. He says, if not, what are your thoughts? At what point does competitive integrity get questioned? Seems to me cheating has already tainted this season. I agree with you, Schmitty. And at some point, I kind of thought that maybe the Big Ten commissioner would suspend Harbaugh like right now. Meaning, hey, the Big Ten commissioner needs to stand up for the other 13 institutions in the Big Ten and say, listen, they're cheating. We've seen it. There's video. Is it still allegedly, or it wouldn't be hard to? Apparently, there's video out on this, right? And it happened. So I would have thought there's a chance Big Ten might suspend him for the rest of the year. Didn't happen. It's a new commissioner. Might not want to rock the boat. I hear that the new commissioner wants to wait and see what the NCAA comes up with. Therefore, they're not doing anything right now. So that's just my thought. Tim from Ypsilanti says, with the playoff rankings coming out, do you think there's a point where the strength of schedule pushes Washington above Michigan, even if they have a loss? Good question. No. I think as the season goes along, Michigan's strength of schedule is going to improve after they play Ohio State and Penn State. Their schedule will no longer be that much of a question. If they lose one game, if they lose one of those, then you're looking at, okay, which teams have they won? So as long as they go undefeated, strength of schedule is not a problem. If Michigan loses a game, strength of schedule does come back into it because then you're comparing them to other one-loss teams. Question 10, Mike from Chicagoland. He says, football has a solid young defensive foundation. Mangum, Spencer, Tatum, Rucker, Harmon, Thompson, Young. Yes. He says, what is it going to take to keep those guys? You didn't mention Hall either, Jordan Hall. Money's got to be there for some of these guys. I think some of the in-state guys like Mangum and Tatum, Thompson, more likely, and Harmon, more likely to keep those guys. Although they'll, who was it? Was it somebody predicted in basketball that it's going to become commonplace that every player in the country in college basketball after the end of the year enters the portal? There'll be no shame to it. Everybody just goes in every single year. Could that happen with this situation? Does everybody go in the portal to see what their market value is? Then they come back? I don't know. Some of these guys like Spencer, a kid from Georgia, Rucker, a kid from Texas, the farther away they are from home, the more likely they are to take some money and go back home. I asked Chance Rucker about it yesterday. Chance Rucker, true freshman from Texas, doing some good things. Very engaging, effervescent personality. Really enjoy talking to him. Really bright personality. A young guy out there is trying to play corner. He's covering well. The new thing for him is taking on the point of attack and being physical as a corner and setting the edge. That's new to him. And He's getting better. He wasn't very good a couple weeks ago, but it's a learning process. When you have freshmen starting on defense, in some ways you're whistling through a graveyard, as Bill Miller used to say, former Michigan State defensive coordinator. Anyway, I asked Spencer about it, and he said he's enjoying his time here. And he says he's not really thinking about it. He didn't even say that. Usually when you're programmed to say, I'm not thinking about it, he didn't even say that. I'll have to go back and see. I think Jason Killip did a story on this. I've not read it yet, where, these freshmen, Chance Rucker's playing college football as a freshman. He's living a dream. He's liking it. He's having fun. He was having fun being at a press conference. He thought that was exciting. It's a brave new world for him, and he's liking it. I don't know, what else goes on or back home, who would be in his ear there. I don't know anything about that. But he was even enjoying the cold weather. He said it made it feel like Christmas. I'm like, dude, it was October 31st. I'm like, cold weather's coming. He goes, yeah, I know. And he was excited about seeing snowfall. He saw some snow flurries the previous day. He's excited about being on campus in the snow flurries. He's liking it. That's a Texas kid. Sam Levitt seems to like it. Now, that guy's going to have a lot of earning power potential in the portal. When the new coach comes in, what's the offense look like? What kind of NIL on the table? These are things that it's going to be there for Sam Levitt. These are things that come into play. He's played, 3 games now or 4? I think 3, I don't know. But he's getting close to that 5-game threshold where you lose your red shirt. And he was asked last week, Levitt was, if he would consider shutting it down before he plays 5 games. And he said, I think he said that he has been talking about that. If he didn't say that, I got the impression that it's been talked about. And frankly, if he were my son, we would be talking about that. Hey, you don't want to play 5 games where you come in and play the last 10 minutes 5 times and lose your red shirt. In this day and age with the transfer portal and everything, if you're still going to be the backup, I think you get to 4 games and you shut it down. I hate to say it, but if it were my son, that's what I would do. So if he's going to continue playing past 5 games and burn the red shirt, it only makes sense for him to do it as a starter. For him, and probably for the program. That's what it looks like to me. Question 11, Jay Wilson from Parts Unknown. Could you spend some time just saying where things stand with Urban from your perspective, not a percentage or a prediction, just where things currently stand on your knowledge? Yeah, and good question. I talked about that there was how the thing started soon after Tucker. And I talked about this earlier in the show already, but I'd heard that soon after Tucker was gone, there were some key Michigan State figures that were going to make a push for Meyer. And I'm like, if that happens, let's just wait and see. And I stayed quiet. 2 weeks later, it came back through that there was some chatter out there. I'm like, yeah, that's true and that's real. Then you start hearing about money that was being thrown around. Then you heard that, so they reached out to Meyer, which I think is factual. I don't know that for a fact. I've not talked to Urban or Michigan State's people that were doing the talking, but there were indications that Michigan State showed interest, and Urban Meyer, as I said, returned volley. He returned interest. Back and forth. And then to the point where money was, kind of money Michigan State would be talking about, to the point where I've heard that Urban Meyer and his people even said this is what type of things we would need. Michigan State, and I heard that Michigan State was like, yeah, we're not going to have that, so we're ready to move on. I heard that, then I dropped down to like less than 3%. Then I heard, no, they are structuring that and put some things in place. Then that crept back up. Then Meyer made those comments. You know what they are. Then he had the denial on 3 with Tim May. I've not talked to Tim May yet. I'm going to have to reach out to him. And people in the industry said, don't take that for face value. There's still some interest simmering there on a low simmer. Okay. And then you hear that he was on campus. I'm like, you're kidding. And then I heard it from multiple pretty good sources. Not the best sources, but good enough to make me. And then Bernie Fratto says it happened. I talked to him. He's got good sources. Like I said, I've never verified it, but I think it happened. So if he's on campus, and I think that happened, I think that this stuff was all live. Now, some people were saying, it's not going to happen. It won't happen. And I respect their opinions, and people have sources, and I don't discount those or refute those. I take that into consideration. And I wouldn't doubt that there are some high-ranking people that are like, no, we're not doing that. But it all comes down to whether the Board of Trustees will approve it and do all these things happen. If the Michigan State people in the Hire Meyer movement, if they didn't already know that they would have the votes, I think they probably already know that they would have the votes, or those people wouldn't stand in the way of it. Alan Haller, very principled person, very measured person, very cautious person. I think I can say it with a measure of confidence that he was not gung-ho on this right away. He wanted to look into it further and further, and still is. Not going to block it, I don't think, but I'm not sure he's like at the forefront carrying the flag. He's very measured. He's still handling the other theater as well, and this is going on. The other part, of course, is whether Urban Meyer would want the job and want to do it at this point. And I when he said he doesn't want to coach, I took that at face value initially, especially the specifics that he laid out. But then, like I said, other sources are like, don't take that at face value. Okay? And other people are like, that's a negotiating thing. I'm like, really? I don't know. I mean, there's some specific personal things in there. That's why I dropped it down below 3% again. And then people are like, I don't know. People whose opinions I trust, and people in the industry with good sources. And then people, that have access to Urban Meyer's, people that I don't have said, no, he wants to coach again. Believe it. Really? Good sources. All right. So that kind of erases my 3%, knowing that the money thing's going on and some key figures that pushed it and the volleying back and forth. And did he come to campus? And were there some Michigan State financial people that made a certain trip somewhere that I've got some primary sourcing on that says there was a trip? A lot of smoke. It ends up being a preponderance of smoke. Meanwhile, it's not been mentioned once on Big News Saturday. Not been mentioned once. It'd be a killer, obvious news point that would go viral if they just asked him, and he said no. That hasn't happened. There's other things that are curious. So, and then the very important, the sub theaters in the industry, so to speak. On Monday, those things were heating up as well. Meanwhile, I mean, there's also rumors in East Lansing from Michigan State people that it is red hot, and I understand that. And there's some people that have been sources in the past for colleagues that have been correct in the past that are saying that it's happening. And those are not my sources, but I've talked to them. So I respect that too. So there's a lot of that going on. But what we don't know is whether, if all that is true and all these things are true, would Urban Meyer take it across the goal line and say, yeah, I'll take the job? I don't know. I don't know what's in his mind, heart, and soul on this. And is there anything at Michigan State that would block it? To my knowledge, no. But for me to try to guess what's going on in his heart, mind, and soul, I don't know. Are these other things going on? Yeah. Have they lost steam? I don't think so. I thought that they were gaining steam earlier this week, but that's the way these things have been going. So I'm not shutting the door on it, but I'm still at 33%. So that's what I've got. If we were at the bar talking about it, that's what it is. That's what it is. All right, question 12. And it changes all the time. So we'll be talking about it on the bunker. Go over to the bunker. We'll talk about it some more as things continue to develop. We'd love to have you as a SpartanMag subscriber, for sure. Question 12, MSU 97 says, posting from my mom's basement while stuffing my face with Hot Pockets and Tahitian treat. I want to be that guy. He says, if we were to hire Urban, do you think there's a chance it would be announced before the end of the season? Yes, I do. Question 13, Tony in Northville. Justin Spiro said there was stonewalling going on from his sources and information has been hard to come by. Has this been your experience as well? Can that be read as a good, bad thing or nothing? Good question. Things do go quiet with some sources. And I've compared notes with Justin a few times, and he's got good sources. We've all got different sources, and it's valuable. It's interesting to compare notes. Stonewalling, when things go quiet, it could mean a number of things, but it might not be a bad thing. Now I'm trying to read quiet. So I don't want to go too far down those rabbit holes, but good point. I don't know the answer. All right, Graham Carpenter, who's been posting on the board prolifically at Underground Bunker Masters board in recent days, and I appreciate him being a part of the bunker and his questions. He's a prolific poster and questioner, and he's got 5 questions for me, and I don't know if I can get to all of them. He says, can you provide an updated percentage on the chance that Urban Meyer will come to Michigan State? I already did that, got it at 33 still. He says, 2, what is your opinion on why Urban Meyer may choose to come to Michigan State? what sets him apart from other potential candidates. On the other hand, why might he choose not to come? Why would he choose not to come? Maybe he's looking to see if something else might open up. There's been some indications that he was interested in USC last year. Texas A&M is out there as a possibility. Why would he not do it? I mean, he laid out those things when he talked about it at the Tennessee Quarterback Club in Knoxville 3 weeks ago when he said, he had health situations. Does he want to get back into the grind? So there's that. And if he is literally worried about that, then maybe at this juncture, maybe he's not the guy. But maybe he's saying that, but on the down low, he's really saying, no, I got it burning in me. I'm ready to coach. I'm just saying that to get the negotiation going. I don't know. Or to spike up the negotiation. I don't know. But it seemed pretty sincere to me. What sets him apart from other potential candidates? That he's Urban Meyer. He's won big. He is a maniac, like he says. And he would be able to come in and hit the portal strong with strength and get proven starters from elsewhere, not second-string four-star guys. And he's a top-to-bottom competitive guy at all 85 scholarship slots. And his name in the Midwest, in Michigan and Ohio, Pennsylvania. Plus, he was a recruiting national guy in Ohio when he was at Ohio State. But, the recruiting pull, the buzz that it would create around the program, it would surpass what Spurrier had at South Carolina. He says, what is your opinion on why Urban Meyer may choose to come to Michigan State? Answer, I think he's always had a lot of respect for Michigan State. I know that in 2002, he wanted to hear from Michigan State when he was doing really well at Bowling Green, and Bobby Williams was fired, and Michigan State never contacted him. Ron Mason headed up the search that year, and they kind of were very slow on things, ended up with John L. Smith. I've mentioned this before, but that Urban Meyer told somebody, and you know who it is, that he would have walked to Michigan State to take that job from Bowling Green back then. I know that's a long time ago, and that was early in his coaching career, but he had a respect for Michigan State back then. He's an Ohio guy, a Northeast Ohio guy from Ashtabula, Ohio. He has respect for Michigan State. He coached against Michigan State. He saw what Michigan State was when he became head coach. Michigan State had won a piece of the Big Ten when he came to Ohio State in year number 1, and they went 12-0 and were ineligible for postseason play that year. They came to Michigan State. I think Pryor was still on that team and dominated Michigan State, had good talent, and he was very fired up to take on Michigan State out of respect. And he didn't lose many games while at Ohio State, but he lost 2 very big ones to Michigan State. And so he saw Mark D'Antonio and what Michigan State was able to become under D'Antonio. And Meyer's one of the best coaches in the last 50 years, so I'm guessing he saw that and may have said to himself, man, D'Antonio's a good coach. He did a good job there, but if I were there, we'd be even better. Just guessing, because he's an ego guy like all coaches are. He probably thinks it can be done there. Would he rather coach at USC? Probably, yes. What other places would he want to coach at that would come open? I mean, Oklahoma's not coming open. Texas is not coming open. Alabama, I don't think he'd want to do that. LSU, is that coming open? I don't know. Does he want to get back into the SEC end of things? I don't know. Tennessee, things are solid there with Heupel. Florida, probably not going back there, right? And Napier looks like he's gotten that turned around a little bit. A&M, maybe. Jimbo Fisher, if you're a Michigan State fan and you want this thing to happen, you want A&M to keep winning. You do not want A&M coming open for Meyer or Elko. Okay, in the Midwest, is Notre Dame coming open? Probably not. Would he go back to Ohio State if bridges been burned there? I think probably not, right? People in Ohio are saying definitely not, but I don't know that to be true. Michigan, is that coming open? I don't know, maybe. Would they take him? I don't know, maybe. Would he want to wait for that? I don't know, maybe. I've not heard that. I doubt it. Penn State, is that coming open? No. So what's left? Michigan State's open. I mean, he's at the bus stop. I hear he wants to coach again. Michigan State's got an empty bus. Do you stop and pick him up? You've got the money to do it. There is some intrigue. You're asking me, why would he? You're asking me, what is your opinion on why Meyer would choose Michigan State? I just outlined some hypotheticals. I've not spoken with the man, but I know Michigan State people thought he might and went after him, and he returned volley. And there is interest there. I talked to Coach Jason Brown yesterday. He says he's very, very much interested based on the people he talks to. And he says, hey, I've got people that played for him. I've got people that have coached for him. I've got people that have been offered jobs for him. I know people that talk to him, and he's interested. That's what Coach Jason Brown said. All right, question number 3. When do you think we can expect an announcement regarding Urban Meyer's potential employment at Michigan State? Will it be after the season or sooner? I think at some point Meyer might come out and say, no, I'm not taking that job, like he did with Nebraska when he said, I'm not up for that job. And he did that like immediately, like a week and a half. This thing, he's either going to take the job or he's going to say, no, I'm not interested publicly That would be that, but he's not said that. And like I said, it's conspicuously absent in Big Noon Saturday as a topic. Question 4, assuming Urban Meyer becomes the head coach at Michigan State, who do you think would be the best fits for the positions of defensive coordinator and offensive coordinator? I've not thought about defensive coordinator, but offensive coordinator, one guy would be Brian Hartline, a guy that's been mentioned as a possible candidate for this job, a rising coach in the staff, great recruiter at Ohio State. Can he recruit at Michigan State? Now he's coordinator at Ohio State, but he's not calling plays. Ryan Day is. Urban Meyer said you can come to Michigan State, you'll call plays, learn to recruit at Michigan State, and de facto could become a very, very good candidate to become the successor. Because at Ohio State, Urban Meyer had Ryan Day. He left, and his successor was Ryan Day. I think the offensive coordinator job, if Urban Meyer were at Michigan State, the offensive coordinator job would become very, very, very attractive to young coaches, because you go there, you're going to get paid well, because Urban Meyer, if he's going to take this job, he's going to make sure everything's in place, including being able to pay offensive assistant coaches extremely handsomely. So it's going to be a high-paying job. You're coaching for Meyer, and you got a really good chance of taking over that job when he leaves. So Hartline would be somebody that I think would be on the short list there. I'm assuming Meyer and Hartline are still in pretty good terms. Maybe Meyer would have somebody else in mind. And I'm just talking hypothetical about a 33% thing, which some people say is 33% too high. I'm just me and you in the fence post, just talking football. That's all this is. But I'll say this, there are people in the industry that are having these same conversations. Maybe it'll all get shot down. Maybe in the next 20 minutes they'll come out and say, dude, I'm not doing it. But hasn't. I think that's going to be it. We've got some other questions that are pretty good ones, but we've been going too long, and I've got some things got to take care of. We've been going for long enough. Appreciate everybody that's been here. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate everybody that's been supporting us at SpartanMag.com. Get over there, become a SpartanMag.com subscriber. If you're not one already, we will continue to have our ear to the ground in the coach search. Go right now, SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber, $1. Go to the Underground Bunker message board, and you'll be able to get a lay of the land as this continues to evolve. And as we continue to keep a look at the other theater, Mike Elko, Jonathan Smith, and everything there. Jason Candle, the Matt Campbell thing, not sure what's going on there. I know there's interest from the Campbell camp. Not sure about Michigan State. That's something that's going on this week. Lance Leipold, I've heard from one source that he's going to be considered now in that theater, whereas before maybe not. I'm not exactly sure why. I can guess. Maybe it's the age thing. I'm waiting in other theaters to see if there's indications of that as well. So anyway, hey, thanks for checking in. We appreciate the SpartanMag.com subscribers, the Michigan State fans. And we know it's been a tough season, but this kind of creates some intrigue. One game left at home. That's against Nebraska this weekend. I'll see you over there. And as you know, Michigan State fans have got a lot of respect for you. But it's not always the easiest thing to be a fan of any team. Michigan State has its challenges, but it has its great moments too, right? And I've seen you enjoy those, and I've got respect for you for that. Anyway, we'll see you next time. Go to SpartanMag.com, subscriber, become a subscriber. SpartanMag.com. Love to see you over there. Thanks for Conodike talking some basketball today, and we'll get back at you soon. We'll see you next time. Take care, everybody.